Good morning. Okay, yeah. Welcome to the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 13th of May 2026. I'm Councillor Ian Massey. I'm the convener of this committee, and I'll introduce the top table to you. On my far left is Councillor Grant Stewart, my vice convener, Miss Audrey Brown, Democratic Support Officer, and Mr Callum MacLeod, Solicitor. And on my right is Mr Christian Smith, Development Management and Building Standards Service Manager, Mr Sean Panton, Team Leader, Major Applications Enforcement, and Mr Paul Williamson, Team Leader, Local Applications. And as this is a hybrid meeting, members joining remotely are reminded that if you leave the meeting during consideration of any application, you are unable to participate or vote on that item when we return to the meeting. This also means that if a member loses their internet connection during consideration, somebody's got their, yeah. During consideration of any item, they should not vote on that item. Please advise the clerk via the meeting chat that you are leaving the meeting, or if you have lost your connection and are therefore unable to vote on that item. And whilst we are operating as a hybrid meeting today for the proceedings, can I remind councillors and officers to use the chat box to attract my attention, Q for question and C for comment. I will now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies and the attendance of those in the chamber and online. Thank you.
Morning. We have apologies today from Bailey Williamson. We will have Councillor Frampton substituting for him, but she will not be joining us until the second application on the agenda. We have Councillor James, who is online, if I can ask him if he's present.
I'm here, thanks Audrey.
Thank you. And I believe we've got Councillor Harvey who will be joining us as well, but I don't think he's going to make it till the second application either. So we have everybody else here present in the chambers at the moment.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have declaration of interest? Bailey McLaren.
Yeah, thank you, convener. I've been advised by legal to declare an interest in item 523 under the local applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, the minute of the Planning and Placemaking Committee of the 15th of April. Can I ask committee to agree the content of the minute? Item 4, deputations. Can I ask the committee if they agree to hear deputations on all the applications on today's agenda? And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the deputations and members of the public watching today. Your request to speak has been granted. You will be called to the lectern as we reach the relevant item on the agenda and be invited to make your deputation by the vice convener, followed by a period of time for questions from members. It is requested that the content of your deputation is kept relevant to the planning consideration in relation to the item of business being discussed. Please also ensure that when answering questions, your response remains relevant and direct to the question asked. Item 5, applications for determination. The first item is a major application, and I believe that Mr MacLeod is going to say a quick word on this application. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. I just wanted to make a quick comment in respect of clarification for the applicant. The committee did receive a copy of the applicant's advisor's note in respect of this application, and it was duly shared with the members yesterday morning. The committee have had the opportunity to consider the note's contents in advance of today's meeting, and the council's planning team have no alterations to the recommendations in light of that note. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first application is for the formation of a 49.9 megawatt solar farm and battery energy storage system comprising of ground-mounted solar arrays, inverters, transformers, a substation, a DNO substation, security fencing, CCTV cameras, cabling, access tracks and associated works at Kinnan Park Farm, Mervyn. And to introduce the report is Mr Panton.
Thank you, convener, and good morning, councillors. So as stated, the first application on the agenda today is for the formation of a 49.9 megawatt solar farm and battery storage facility near Medvin, Perth. Unfortunately, we are recommending refusal to you today for 3 different reasons. The first reason being that the development, owing to its size, scale, appearance and location, raises significant landscape character and visual impact concerns, which we consider to fail to contribute positively to the quality of the surrounding built and natural environment. The second reason being that inadequate mitigation is proposed to offset the landscape and visual impact concerns, and the third reason being in regard to the loss of prime agricultural land and impact upon soils. Members should also note that 320 representations were received regarding this proposal. 316 of these were objecting to the proposed development, 1 was a general comment, and the remaining 3 were letters of support. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. First up, we can see the location of the site, which is approximately 700 metres to the southeast of Medvin and also to the southwest of the A85 and Medvin Castle. The majority of the site under question is agricultural land, which is currently in arable use for crop growing. The site measures approximately 99 hectares. To give members a better understanding of what 99 hectares looks like, this is equivalent to nearly 100 football pitches. Next slide, please. The plan before you shows what was originally submitted as part of this application. Officers were concerned at this for reasons mentioned at the beginning of my presentation and as such requested amendments to the scheme. The applicant and agent obliged and subsequently submitted revised proposals for consideration. Next slide, please. We now have the revised site plan that was submitted. As you can see, there are a number of improvements, namely improved landscape buffers and the omission of solar arrays on the rightmost field. Officers are satisfied that this scheme is an improvement from the original submission, however remain concerned at the unsuitability of the proposed scheme. Next slide, please. We now have a typical elevation plan of the proposed solar arrays. As can be seen, they will be slightly elevated from the ground and angled at approximately 15 degrees to obtain optimum sunlight. Each panel will rise to approximately 2.66 metres from ground level. Next slide, please. We can now see a typical elevation for the battery storage units, for which each will measure approximately 6 metres in length, 2.4 metres in width, and 3.4 metres at maximum height. As you can see, these batteries appear like large storage containers. Next slide, please. We now move on to a series of recent photographs taken by the case officer. This first image is taken from the rear of Kinnan Park farmhouse, looking northeast towards Powside and Easter Powside. Next image, please. Again, this photograph is taken from the rear of Kinnan Park farmhouse, this time looking in a more northerly direction. The land rises towards Morris Hill Wood. Next image, please. This image shows the field where panels were originally proposed, but have since been omitted from the proposed scheme. Next image, please. This image shows the view looking north and northwest, showing the existing overhead lines running directly north, with Medvin itself being beyond this image. Next slide, please. This final photograph shows some existing farm buildings which are central to the site and opposite the existing access. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Panton. We do have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputations procedures.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call Mr. Mills objector, please? Good morning, Mr. Mills. As you're aware, you have got 5 minutes. Whenever you're ready to start, I'll start the clock.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I am Richard Mills, and I live with my family and livestock at Kinnan Park farmhouse. We have opposed this solar development since we've learnt about it back in 2023, as we would not only be surrounded by the proposed development, but because of the negative impact it would have on the surrounding environment. During the consultation period, the local community has also shown their opposition with over 300 constructive statements outlining their reason to oppose this. After independent surveys, some of these points have been partly addressed. However, concerns regarding the best sites still remain. Also, the potential for serious flooding caused by flash events with the water impacting houses situated on the Pow. I'm heartened by the motion today to refuse this solar development on account of it not meeting both national and local planning guidelines. The siting of the development on the side of a valley means it would be visible for miles around. This will have an adverse effect on the tourism of the area, which in turn will impact on the life and businesses of the local community. The core paths that cross the site provide an important resource for the well-being of the community in accessing the countryside. This would be compromised by fences and security cameras, leading to a feeling of enclosure. The major point is the use of prime agricultural land. As a country, we now overgenerate electricity and underproduce our food, with over 40% needing to be imported. Food production should therefore take priority, a sentiment echoed by many in government. The local community is seeing numerous renewable development plans coming up, and the cumulative effect of these is hitting at the heart of this community. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Are you willing to take questions from members if they wish? Okay, members, Mr. Mills is willing to take questions, so if you populate the chat function for me, please. And Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you, Mr. Mills, for your deputation. You suggested, if I caught you rightly, that you would be surrounded by this development. Can you just let me have an idea on that map whereabouts you live? Just is it the pink or the yellow bit? The white one. Yeah, I can see where you're pointing to now. Is it a farmhouse? Are you a farmer? Sorry, you need to.
Is an independent entity. We have livestock and farm the small 2-3 acres that we have in a profitable egg production.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you, Mr. Mills, for your presentation. Quick question, really, coming back to the agriculture side. You said it was an ongoing field growing food. Can you give us an idea what sort of crops are grown in that field as it is now? We said it's an active field, so what sort of crops are grown there?
So I just hold it down. I just leave it like that. Currently this year, there are crops of potatoes, peas. There have been carrots on the high graded land. They also grow oilseed rape for the oil production. They also grow oats, which is a massive crop in Scotland now. So there's a wide diversity of crops grown on the graded land and have been over the years that we have been there. So they're all crops that are going into the food system. So it's providing food for the country.
Mr. Mills, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Can I call on Councillor Frampton, local member and objector to the application? for members' information, Councillor Frampton wishes to make a statement and she's not wanting to take any questions. Councillor Frampton, whenever you're ready, could I ask you to bend the microphone? Thank you. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Thank you. Good morning. I have come to speak here today not just as a councillor of the Almond and Erne ward, which takes in Methven, Bridgeverne, Abernethy and other villages, but also as a messenger for 320 of our fellow citizens. These are 320 local residents who have taken the time to formalise their concerns, to study the plans and to say with one clear and resonant voice, no to the application in front of us. We are here today to discuss a sizable solar and battery storage installation application. In the current climate, it is very easy to let the green label of a project act as a shield against scrutiny. But a project is not sustainable if it destroys the very foundations of our local environments and our food security. Planning is about balance. It is about the right development in the right location. However, this proposal fails the most fundamental test of our own local development plan. Specifically, I point you to Policy 50. This application seeks to build on prime agricultural land. This is not a marginal land, this is the high quality soil that grows food for our tables. Once you cover prime earth with glass, steel and lithium-ion batteries, you're not just borrowing it for years, you're downgrading it. We're living in an era of global instability where food security is becoming as critical as energy security. We cannot keep sacrificing our best fields for infrastructure that could and should be placed on brownfield sites. Furthermore, this proposal stands in direct contradiction to Policy 1A on placemaking and Policy 39 on landscaping. Methven is, as well as the rest of Almond and Erne ward, defined by its rural character, its hills and its heritage. To industrialise a specific landscape with a sizable installation of this scale is to ignore the visual and physical impact on the community. It doesn't enhance a place, it erodes it. It doesn't respect the landscape, it overwrites it. I want to talk about the fair share of the whole of Almond and Erne ward. And I want to be perfectly clear. I understand the need for renewable energy. I agree that we must transition our grid, but Almond and Erne has already stepped up to the plate. Our ward is already home to a significant concentration of solar farms, battery storage sites and wind farms. We have done our bit, we have accepted our share of the national burden. But there is a tipping point where a contribution becomes a saturation. Our ward has been viewed as an easy target for developers, a blank canvas for industrialisation of energy projects. But this isn't a blank canvas. It is a home, it is a workplace for farmers, it is a landscape that belongs to the people. A line needs to be drawn somewhere. We need to say enough is enough. If we continue to grant every application that comes forward for the Almond and Erne ward, simply because it carries the renewable tag, in years to come, we may have destroyed the local environment that we are meant to protect for food stability. The 320 people who recorded their objections are not nobodies. They are residents who see the cumulative impact of these projects every single day. They are people who value the integrity of the local development plan and expect us, as their representatives, to uphold it. 320 objectors is a massive number for a local application. It represents a groundswell of community anxiety and a collective demand for common sense. They have a right to be heard, and today I am here to ensure that their voices are the loudest ones in this room. They are asking you to protect our prime agricultural land. They are asking you to direct developers towards brownfield sites that actually need regeneration, rather than green fields that are for cattle and produce. On behalf of those 320 residents, and on the grounds of Policy 1A, Policy 39 and Policy 50, I ask this committee to listen to the community. I ask that you recognise that Almond and Erne ward has reached its limit. I ask you to agree with the 320 Methven voices and agree with the officer's recommendation for refusal of this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frampton. Can I remind you to leave the room and we'll collect you for the next application. Could I now call on Mr. Gray? Mr. Gray is an agent, Mr. Gregg is a supporter, and they'll be accompanied by Mr. Wallace, who will be supporting Mr. Gray and Gregg to answer questions. Good morning, gentlemen. As you're aware, you'll have 10 minutes for your deputation. However you want to use your 10 minutes, that's up between the two of you. Whenever you're ready to start, I'll press the clock.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair, Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Cameron Gregg. I'm a partner in the planning law team at Morton Fraser McRoberts. I've had an opportunity to consider the assessment of my client's proposal, which has been set out in the report of handling before you. I understand you've received a copy of a note that my firm produced in that regard, and I'm obliged that that was accepted and considered. The reasons for refusal, of course, relate to landscape and visual impact and impact on prime agricultural land in terms of the recommendations in the report of handling. And I'm concerned that the approach set out in that report is legally flawed and that this undermines the officer's recommendations for refusal on these grounds. In my respectful submission, there are two primary issues with the assessment which I'd like to highlight this morning. Firstly, the report fails to give proper effect to the policy direction of MPF4. MPF4 is, of course, the most recent statement of government policy and it requires to be given effect to. The key policies in this regard are Policy 11 on energy and Policy 5 on soils. Policy 11 provides that, and I'll quote from the policy, development proposals for all forms of renewable, low carbon and zero emission technologies will be supported. These include solar arrays. And the policy goes on to recognise that significant landscape and visual impacts, quote, are to be expected for some forms of renewable energy where impacts are localised and or appropriate design mitigation has been applied, they will generally be considered to be acceptable. Policy 5 on soils provides that, quote, development proposals on prime agricultural land or land of lesser quality that is culturally or locally important for primary use will only be supported where it is for the generation of energy from renewable sources. MPF4 accordingly provides very considerable support for green energy proposals, notwithstanding localised landscape and visual impacts or impacts on prime agricultural land. That support does not appear to be reflected in the officer's assessment. Secondly, the report places too much reliance on LDP policies, which are at odds with and have been superseded by the more recent policy direction in MPF4, which requires to take precedence. As you know, Section 24 of the 97 Act provides that in the event of any incompatibility between a provision of the National Planning Framework and a provision of a local development plan, whichever of them is later in date is to prevail. In this instance, MPF4 is later in date and must accordingly prevail in the event of any incompatibility with the Council's local development plan. By way of an example, the officer's report relies heavily on an alleged conflict with the local development plan policy on soils, at paragraph 67 to 71 of the report, whereas in the event of incompatibility, it's policy 5 of MPF4 that falls to be applied. On a proper analysis, therefore, and in my submission, the proposed development is entirely supported by the statutory development plan, against which it falls to be assessed, and consent should accordingly be granted. I'll pass you over to Neil Gray to speak to the key planning issues. Thank you.
Morning, Chair and members. The officer's report contains many findings that support approval. The recommended refusal is a planning balance judgment. We've heard this already today from the councillor who deputised. It's not an unavoidable policy bar, as you've heard from my colleague. Members can lawfully reach a different balance, particularly under, again, as you heard from my colleague, MPF policies 1 5 and 11. I'm going to go through a summary of the main support findings which have been highlighted in the officer's planning report. In terms of principle, the report accepts that LDP2 policy 33 has support, and that MPF4 policies 1 and 11 support the size and the scale of this solar farm. It would make a substantial contribution to net zero, and it would include power for around 11,000 homes. Policy 11 directs that significant weight is given to renewable energy generation and emissions reduction. The next point I'll come on to is technical matters. Broadly, consultees largely have no objection or subject to conditions. The report records no objection or no objection subject to conditions from key consultees on transport, flooding, ecology, heritage, aviation, noise, glint glare, public safety. Refusal is not based on an unmitigatable technical constraint. In other words, we feel planning conditions can help mitigate further and control the development, which itself is a temporary proposal for 40 years. Third point to highlight, has been heard again today, is landscape. There are no designated landscape for the site itself. The effects, again, as we've heard today, are localised and will soften. The site is not within the landscape conservation, as I've said. Effects are localised. The proposed mitigation is to soften views over time, which has been substantially altered, improved, as you heard from the officer's introduction. And the consent, as I've said before, is time limited and potentially therefore reversible through decommissioning and restoration back to agricultural land. We've mentioned earlier in the officer's report, the officer's introduction today, the design evolution and the mitigation that's been built into the proposals. Following consultation, which has been extensive again, as you've heard today, pipe fields have been removed, panels on the Class 2 farmland have been removed, and the grid connection has been confirmed to be underground. Mitigation includes new hedgerows and trees, wildflower meadows, grazing mix, ecological set-aside near closest receptors. You've also heard today about soils and agriculture. MPF4 Policy 5 does allow renewable energy on prime agricultural land with minimisation and restoration. The Class 2 land, as we've mentioned, has been avoided, and only a small island of Class 3.1 prime agricultural land is reduced in terms of the plans as proposed. There's also a soil management plan proposed as mitigation, which would be a planning condition should you decide to approve planning permission today. The final point is the local fair share. Again, you've heard from the local councillor today and from the several objectors who have commented on the application. Solar is a modest part of the current renewable energy capacity mix. PKC's LDP3 evidence report, which is your future plan, not the current plan. At the time it was written for an evidence report, it records around about 40 megawatts of solar PV existed in PKC at 22, and accepted that was in 22, compared with much higher wind and hydro. So this proposal clearly would make a significant contribution to future renewable energy development mix. You've heard from my colleague about the plan and balance, and I think you've heard also from the introduction from the planning officer. We'll just reiterate, policy 1 of MPF4 is the key policy in terms of MPF4 in terms of climate change and addressing the nature crisis. And policy 11 of MPF4 does support solar and storage and directs significant weight to renewable energy generation. We've heard also about policy 11. It doesn't require zero landscape change. It asks whether effects can be localised, appropriately mitigated, and are they reversible? And our answer to that would be yes in all these cases. So I'll thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think the key thing in summing up is not the question whether there's any change. I think we all accept there will be change. Our response on that is it's localised, it can change over time, and it's also reversible. It's a choice that has to recognise the issues that impacts everybody within Methven, Perthshire, Scotland and beyond. Climate change, energy security, cost of energy. We've heard a lot about this in the news, not just today, as you've heard from the other speakers. We've been here with his planning application for 3 years. The matter is not going away, and the matter we're hopefully trying to address through this proposal and others. So, in conclusion, I believe members have a sound basis to approve, subject to conditions on various matters such as construction, traffic, drainage, flood resilience, soil management, landscaping, biodiversity, noise and lighting, glint and glare, protection of trees, hedgerows, decommissioning, restoration. These are all points that were raised in the positive responses from various statutory consultees following the design iterations. So therefore, for those reasons, we ask members to give significant weight to the renewable energy and climate benefits identified in the report, and we also ask you to support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. As we heard earlier, you're willing to take questions. So members, if you have questions, can you populate the chat function, please? Councillor Braun.
Yep, thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you both for your presentation. There's a question probably directed to both of you, but probably more to Mr. Gregg. In his statement, he was talking about various policy quotes in NPF and LDP too. An implication I got from him was that when it comes to any agricultural land, it's up for grabs if renewable energy is involved. This is a threat to food security, as we've heard from people. So my question is, what's your version of the loss of food security here and the loss of producing land? And am I right in assuming from what you said that any agricultural land is up for grabs if it's renewable energy? That's what you seem to be saying.
Thank you. Perhaps if I answer first, and then I'll pass over to Mr. Gray in case he has anything further to say. From my perspective, I was just dealing with the legal aspects and the interpretation of the policy and this issue of incompatibility between LDP policies and policies in NPF4. And here we have two policies directed towards prime agricultural land. We've got one in the underlying LDP, and we've got one in policy 5 of NPF4. And in the event of an incompatibility, what the law says, what the 1997 Act says, is that it's whichever one's later in date is to prevail. So it's policy 5 that falls to be applied here if it is indeed incompatible with policy 50 of the LDP. And policy 5 does provide explicit support for renewable energy schemes on prime agricultural land. It doesn't have anything to say about issues of food security and things like that. They could potentially be material considerations which you could have regard to. I'll pass you over, but I suppose in order to do so, you'd want to have cogent evidence to support those claims. I'll pass you over to Mr. Gray in case he has anything further to add.
The only points I would add, just really to reiterate what my colleague said, food security doesn't feature in the development plan. However, renewable energy does. And when you were asking about sort of carte blanche, any land open up for grabs, I think the comment you made, 8% of this site is on prime agricultural land. Admittedly, it was a larger proportion, and through design and mitigation, reduced it down to 8%. That may still sound like a large area, but the context of that particular area of 8% is we've effectively an island. So for mechanisation or other farming practices, it's very difficult to imagine or experience that it would be a productive field. Now, that's not discrediting farmers and the businesses within the pasture area of which we're looking at here, but it wouldn't be a productive area if this solar farm were to be allowed. Notwithstanding, the land then would be over to biodiversity and other land uses in addition to the solar, which would still have a benefit. We heard earlier about the nature crisis and about biodiversity. So there is a balance accepted, and yes, there is no policy support for food security.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and also to Mr. Wallace and Mr. Gray for their deputation. You've mentioned planning balance, and you've mentioned policy 11 and policy 5, and a number of times you've mentioned localised. I'd just like to understand, when does the argument of localised become invalid and saturation become the norm?
sure we'll play this the same way, where I'll kick off and then I'll pass over to Mr. Gray, if that's okay. In terms of localised, when we're looking at policy 11, it recognises what I tried to get across in my presentation is that policy 11 provides strong policy support for renewable energy developments, including solar arrays, and there's an acknowledgement in that policy that there's going to be significant landscape and visual impacts. And there's explicit acknowledgement that where those impacts are localized, then they should generally be acceptable. So that's the guidance we have when you've obviously got to consider each case on its own particular merits. Here we have a solar array which appears to have strong policy support in policy 11 in my submission. Impacts are localized, so reading the policy on its terms, that would appear to indicate that this particular proposal benefits from the support that policy 11 offers. The effects are localized, they're generally accepted. So you'd be looking to that general support in my submission should apply here. There's no exceptional circumstances which would detract from the general thrust of the policy. Hopefully that's of some assistance.
Just to pick up on, excuse me, just to pick on some of the points about localised. Again, I think it came across in the plan officer's presentation or Mr. Patton's presentation. The iteration that was involved in the design did look at local issues. Obviously, it was triggered with a lot of public response, but it was also triggered by the consultees, who are local agencies, so they are national bodies, but they still have local representation, including officers who represent the council here. So I suppose the localised part is where I'm coming from in terms of planning balance, is for the national good, there is the need for the energy. And for the localised good, there's the need to try and mitigate and help improve the design, help improve what could be future. So probably to underline again the point that was made, there is no set guidance in terms of MPF4 about how to interpret these policies. I think that's, in my own admission, this is me not talking about the applicant, this is me just talking professionally. I think the planning system unfortunately failed that part in terms of providing transitional guidance or advice about how people should interpret these policies. I think in terms of localised, we've answered the question. I think the other point you'd asked about was planning balance. So, yeah. So again, probably just reiterate what my colleague has said, planning balance, we're looking at a national requirement, a national crisis, a national issue. We're also looking then at localised issues. There's a balance. The other balance then is the move away from fossil fuels towards a greener energy future, the transition. So that's a balance again. How do we square that balance? I suppose the other part of the balance is how do we provide a fair share? And again, I think we heard from the councillor who deputised earlier, a fair share of renewable energy. And I'm not just talking about Methven, I'm not just talking about Perth and Ross Council, I'm talking about Scotland, UK. There has to be a balance struck that as well. And then in terms of planning balance, as in practice planning balance, there is the development plan and there's material consideration. So we're saying to you, development plan wise, we think it's a very strong case. Material considerations, we feel there is also a strong case on the basis of the information we've decided today.
Hayley McLaren.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Convener. Yeah, I think we've had enough said here about food producing land, which is of vital importance to food security. I would like to ask you a question on your consultation processes. We, as a planning committee, have all received many emails regarding this concerns, and as Councillor Frampton reiterated in her statements, I would like to have a better understanding of your consultation, what came out of it. Yes, you were saying you reacted to it, but we're still viewing a large application here. So please could you help us out on that?
So I think going back, not to the beginning, I don't want to spend lots of time over it, but yes, it's been a long process in terms of consultation. Under the planning requirements, we are required as a major development to consult with the community. As you probably know, that involved 2 public consultation events, meetings with councillors, or meetings with the community council, sorry, not councillors, councillors who attended the meeting as well. We've also had meetings with the planning officers pre-application. So probably back to the planning balance question again, it's trying to listen to not just, you know, the officers, not just yourselves, not just the community. It's a balance of all these issues. So the major application process hopefully provides that platform. In terms of the methods, the statutory methods were applied. We did get a lot of response from people who took the time to turn up, also took the time to respond to us in writing. We also chapped on doors. There's 2 parts to chapping on doors, which again, my colleagues here can underline if there's any questions on that. What I mean by that was we did speak or tried to speak to the most nearest residents in terms of face-to-face. We left business cards and we left information. Unfortunately, that wasn't reciprocated. We did meet them during the public consultation period and we had opportunities to discuss these. So we have taken on board a lot of comments that have been made. As I've said, we actually responded quite strongly in terms of the design and the iteration process, which was facilitated by the planning officers themselves.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. I just want to come back to a point that Councillor Frampton made during her deputation, and she said that there were plenty of sites where these can be built, brownfield sites, whatever. There'll always be a problem with visual concerns, obviously, wherever you go, we accept that. But there are brownfield sites which don't have this conflict with agricultural land. I just wonder why you haven't, I don't know Armagh Learn that well, so it may well be there aren't many there, but why haven't you chosen a site such as a brownfield site which isn't agricultural land, so it avoids that conflict?
It's a fair point, absolutely. I think just looking at scale is probably the main thing. Scale by efficiency scale, not in terms of land area scale, excuse me. Brownfield can provide its fair share of renewable energy. As you know, you can provide these on rooftops of buildings, industrial buildings, car parks, which does happen, obviously. That's a smaller scale in terms of the feed into the national network, the grid, and the energy requirements that are predicted for the future. So it makes a small contribution. There's no question about that. But in order then to provide that future security of energy, large sites such as this and many others are, unfortunately, from the perspective of many people, required. Otherwise, we just won't get to the targets that are very evidently needed to beat climate change and bring net zero. So again, back to planning balance, it can be something that the mixture of fields and the mixture of brownfield sites can provide the renewable energy requirement. We're hoping this particular case and many others similar to this case will provide that boost so that other parts of the country can help its fair share and enjoy energy, clean energy from it. I suppose the other part then is multiple sites we require to provide the same level of energy generation as is proposed here. That in itself would require a lot more resources and effort from councils, from other agencies to process, assess and decide these applications. So again, I don't want to keep leaving the point. It's another balancing act, unfortunately. That's the nature of land use and planning.
Nothing really to add to that, just that the site's obviously to be assessed on its own particular circumstances, and the policy doesn't require any sequential test or anything like that. It provides policy support for the location that has been selected. That's all I'd add to that.
Sir, excuse me, Councillor Allen.
Thank you again. And I'm going to ask a question, and forgive me, please stop me if this is not competent. I forgot to ask Mr. Mills, but I can ask you guys anyway. You mentioned about the consultation process. Mr. Mills stays right in the middle of that complex. Can you help me understand how that consultation went?
Mr. Mills is here if you want him to speak too. So I'm not speaking on his behalf. We did, as I mentioned to the other councillor, we did, in addition to the wider public consultation, which was broadcast by social media, leaflet drop, you name it, we did knock on the residents' doors, and there's no response. So that was at the very early design stage. So prior to public exposure, disclosure of the planning application itself. It was a really important part of the proposal stage, because clearly, as you see from the map and as you've heard from the gentleman, they would be in the middle of, in your words, the development. So we did contact the residents on a one-to-one basis, but unfortunately didn't manage to have the discussion with them. And that happened with quite a few others nearabouts. We did actually successfully manage to contact another resident further down, still within the central part of the site that you see there. I had a conversation with them. We were actually given access to their upper floor to take photographs of the site from their upper floor, which actually contributed to the visual and the landscape assessment that was prepared. So it's unfortunate that's how that initial engagement occurred. And as I said, through the public events, we did have conversations with the resident.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you for your presentation, guys. My question, I think, is mainly for Mr. Gray. In principle, I'm interested in the question of visual amenity and how that is affected by MPF4 and also the local development plan. The implication of what you're saying, or what you said, was that effectively it can't be used as a reason for refusal. And I'm just wondering, I mean, there's no guidance on the MPF4 for visual amenity and so on. So presumably case law will cut in, and should we decide to refuse this on the basis of visual amenity, that will form part of the case law. I'm just curious, do you think that visual amenity is a reasonable reason for refusing? Should we deem it to be impactful, if you like, given it's 100 football pitches in scale?
Thank you for the question. It's certainly a relevant factor to be considered, but it just needs to be considered, I would say, taking with a proper understanding of what the policy requires. So yes, the policy does look towards a balancing exercise of significant landscape and visual impacts against the renewable energy benefits, but it's a weighted exercise in that the policy directs support for the renewable energy benefits. It acknowledges that there's going to be significant landscape and visual impacts, and it acknowledges that where those impacts are localized, they should generally be accepted. So there's still scope for balancing those two interests and reaching a conclusion on policy 11, but the policy does direct you towards the weight that should be given to the impacts. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, just to add to that, I suppose looking a bit more detail, and I'm not the expert in landscape and visual impact assessment. We have had experts who have dealt with the project, so some of the terminology I use is not professionally, but they had consulted a lot with council officers about receptors, i.e. locations for taking viewpoints. I'd mentioned before access to one of the residents' houses to take viewpoints from their house. So in terms of the visual, and you said localised impacts on visual, they have been taken into account and they have been assessed professionally, and they have been assessed in consultation with residents and other local areas. How you define that, I think the other point you made was about sort of scale. How you define that, again, there's no, as my colleague said, there's no sort of written guidance on that, other than, as I said, it was engagement with the professionals within the council and other landscape bodies with a professional landscape architect who came up with these receptors. Another example, for example, so excuse me, that is Methven Castle. We recognised early as a Grade A listed building, there may be significant or impacts on the visual or the setting of the castle. And that was something very early in the case that we looked at and looked at trying to help mitigate design. And again, that was in consultation with the resident of the castle, but also with the agencies involved. And some of the landscape and visual work that was done looked at that particular case, but also the battlefield. I think the battlefield is another part that was raised as a concern through the early stages of the application. So where there had been issues arisen about visual impact, these have been addressed or these have been seriously looked at. Unfortunately, not to the satisfaction of the planning officers, as you've read in the report.
Councillor James.
Thanks, Vice Convener. I've been listening very intently, and you're very good at pointing out the legalities and what have you. But there's also a human element to this, and the point's been raised about this is a huge site which is taking up prime agricultural land, and food security is important. Whilst it's not in the NPF4, that doesn't count according to you, but energy does. So it's mitigation, being selective. So my point is, whilst you're pointing out all the legalities of what you think is right, our officers have, who are experts, they're giving us advice on planning. They've given us 3 reasons that they believe you don't meet, and I've not heard you say anything to counter that advice. So what are you doing, or what is your intention to mitigate the refusals that we're being given? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. What we've hopefully tried to set out is we obviously have one set of recommendations in the report of handling that the officers have prepared, and what we've tried to set out during our presentations this morning is our own analysis, which is that on our analysis of the relevant policies, particularly policies 5 on soils and policy 11 on energy, there is broad policy support for the proposal, and the impacts that have been identified as grounds of refusal, so landscape and visual impact. In my reading of policy 11, significant landscape and visual impacts are to be expected. Localized impacts are generally acceptable. That appears to me to be the territory we're in here. Policy 5, prime agricultural land. Again, there's support there for renewable energy schemes on prime agricultural land. So my reading of it would be that this proposal benefits from considerable support as a result of those policies, and on that basis we would suggest that that's an avenue for the council to go down should it wish to grant the consent. So that would be our interpretation and rebuttal of what's in the recommendations. Mr. Gray, do you have anything?
Just really in response to the mitigation part of your question, I'd mentioned in the representation, your question was what are we doing? So we've worked with the planning officers on aspects of the development that can be mitigated. So the main one I've discussed earlier was about design. There are also others which won't be in your committee report because this is recommendation for refusal, but there would be planning conditions should you wish to approve the application, one of which includes a soil management plan, so that would address the policy 5 issue. There are other matters such as the hedgerow growing and other landscape mitigation effects which would be designed into any planning condition. So these are the these are the points that would be helping to mitigate, or what are we doing to address the planning officer's negative position on this. I would say, and again, this is professionally, we don't agree with the planning officer clearly, because we're here asking for support for the planning application. It's unfortunate we don't agree, because we are all professionals together in this application. And whilst been very helpful in working with us, we have come to a point where we just disagree. That's as simple as the point we can make on that point. So I don't think there's anything further we can do in terms of design, or anything further we can do in terms of mitigating the loss of soil, which is 8% of prime agricultural land. What we can do is, if permission was granted, is work through the planning conditions which the authority have. We have discussed these in general terms. Nothing's obviously been drafted, but just in practice, we discussed these. And these are things that we're quite confident, and the planning officers would be, that this would be something that could be mitigated and help to soften the impacts of the localised development.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'd just like, if you don't mind, to come back to my last point on consultation. The person who had the most significant interruption as far as that plan is concerned and stood up as an objector, you said that you had not spoken to him. You've maybe left a business card or a leaflet or whatever. The person who is most significantly affected by this whole thing, you haven't spoken to them. Didn't you think it was important that you should maybe knock on the door 3 or 4 times rather than just the once?
Don't want to get into an argument with you. We did knock on his door again. We left a business card, we phoned, we didn't have an answer. On the day of the public events, there were 2 events. The couple did attend both, and we were polite, as were they, about the discussion, more or less what we're having right now. So we did engage, and we did speak with them face to face. So I disagree with your analysis, unfortunately.
Gentlemen, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you. Can I ask if members have any questions for officers? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. I'll ask one and then I'll let you come back. Councillor Frampton, during her deputation, mentioned that there had been, well, I think the word she used was that Armagh had done its bit for renewable energy. So the implication was there's other sites. And I wonder if you could tell us roughly how many other sites of renewable energy, keep it general, are within this Armagh ward.
Thanks, Councillor Braun. So firstly, I would point out that within the MPF4 and LDP2, it does not subcategorise PKC to say you can have a certain amount in this area, a certain amount here. So that's not really a planning consideration for us today, whether Armagh and Nairn have done their part, unfortunately. So unfortunately, I can't answer that one.
Go ahead with your second question, Councillor Braun.
Fine, thank you very much. And I'm not connected really, but it comes on to this question about the agricultural land. Probably going to sidetrack this one. I appreciate that, Mr. Bantam, but we're talking about accumulation effect. But do we monitor how much agricultural land is being used up for? And I'm not just talking about Armagh and Nairn. Generally, it's being used up. I mean, we've seen a lot of cases come through here in the last year or two where we're putting renewable energy, sometimes housing, but mainly renewable energy sites. That could be battery storage, it could be solar farms, it could be wind farms on agricultural land, which could be used for crop growing. So do we keep an idea of what's building up here? Not hold the perfect cross, if you want to put it that way.
Thanks, Councillor Braun. Yes, in short, we do, and that will all feed into the LDP3 process. So that for LDP3, they can analyse exactly what's been used and if there is a policy requirement to restrict things further. But we do record it, yes.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, convener. Just Councillor Bronze. Just we kind of the grid connection stuff, and with this latest legal case, and the an underground cable going to Boroughmuir station for the connection. Would it not be, from a cumulative element with this, and we see that a lot of these developments, and this is just subjective within this committee, and we see a lot of these developments coming around where the grid connections are easier available, which means when you are assessing whether to approve or any of the applications, do you look at that cumulative bit around specific areas where there's grid connections, and is there any way to look at that from a future perspective, and going back to Councillor Frampton's element, where her view is that there's quite a lot of applications in the Bridge of Erne in that area. Is that a consideration you're taking in from the cumulative perspective, that if there is a grid connection, we could just overdevelop it because that's what the developers want. That's where the applications are coming forward, and they're not coming forward to areas where there's no grid connection. So it does tend to concentrate and create that cumulative effect.
Thanks, Councillor Waters. So yes, we do look at cumulative impacts on all occasions. So as per kind of paragraphs 120 and 121 of the report, recently there was a court decision which is known as the Rayshaw decision, and that requires us as a planning authority to ensure that any grid connection for any development or associated haul track, things like that, are assessed as part of the development. Now, for this proposal, you correctly stated this is to connect to the Boroughmuir substation, and that will be through approximately 5.6 kilometres of underground cabling, mainly under the roads. So we, as planning officers, don't have any concerns with the grid connection on this occasion, because even when you look at it cumulatively, because it's underground and under the roads, it's not going to have much impact upon the local area. So yes, we do look at grid connections. Yes, we do look at cumulative impact, but we don't have any concerns with the grid connection itself on this occasion.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Convener. I've actually got two questions, but the first question is, if we were to approve this application, how would the planning department impose planning conditions?
So if members were to approve this today, it would obviously be up to yourselves what conditions were applied, but we would recommend all the conditions as recommended by consultees, and we'd probably add an additional one about site restoration at the end of the 40-year period. But it would ultimately be your decision as councillors, but we would recommend all the conditions that were recommended by consultees, plus an additional one about site restoration.
The second question is, if we were to go with the planners and refuse the application, do the applicants have any right to appeal?
Yes, they would have a right of appeal. Because this is a major application determined by this committee, it wouldn't go to the council's local review body, it would go to the Scottish Government DPEA for assessment. That could then be called in by Scottish ministers. So a recent example from PKC is obviously the Cooper Angus solar farm. That was one that we recommended refusal to this committee. Committee agreed. It got called to the Scottish Government DPEA, and it was then called in by Scottish ministers. So something similar could happen here. But in short, the applicant would be entitled to an appeal, and it would in the first instance go to the Scottish Government DPEA.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions? If can I ask for a motion? Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you, Convener. We've heard from the applicants, we've heard from Councillor Frampton, and we've heard from the objectors. I'm content to go along with the planner's recommendation to refuse the application on the basis of landscape impact and the impact on prime agricultural grounds. As a following point, both Councillor Smith and I attended both the consultation events, and we're both of the opinion that we should refuse this application. So thank you.
Councillor Braun, you wish to second?
Yes, thanks, convener. I do wish to second. I think this is a complex case. I think the applicants made it quite clear that this is a question of balance. There's no point in debating that. That's true, and obviously this can move forward to somewhere else, as you mentioned, Mr. Panton. It could go to DPEA. I'm glad it won't become a DLRB at least. So there are some good things I think in life, but I think it's important to be clear about this. I've read this through, read the papers, listened to what the objectors have said, read what's been said on paper, online, listened to the applicants, and I think there's two takeaways here which I think are important and balance my thinking in this. The first is, of course, obviously a comment was made here. It's in many of the objection comments. It's made by the paper we've had recently about net zero. And a contribution to climate change and to affect it. It's public knowledge now that this country only produces 1% of emissions. Mathematically, we are at net zero anyway, and this site will not have any contribution to affecting climate change. It's already here and affecting us. But more important to this, the question is over the use of renewable energy on land. I understand from what I've read that Scotland produces is self-sufficient now in renewable energy and in fact sells it to the rest of the UK at the moment. So the point is, and I think it's quite right, that we can have more renewable energy. There's no reason why we can't. We do need more, and if we're not using it ourselves, it means we can sell more and obviously make more money for the country. But the fact that we have it in sufficient form means that we can now be far more selective in where we site these renewable energy projects. And I think it's important that we have to take into account that agricultural land that grows crops is finite. It doesn't go on forever. And we have seen, as I mentioned in my question to you, Mr. Panton, several cases over the last few years where agricultural land is being used up. It's quite right. It does say in NPF4 and LDP2 that renewable energy can be used on agricultural land. But I don't believe that those who framed NPF4, certainly not the councillors, I was part of it, that framed LDP2 in the last session, had in mind that every piece of agricultural land was up for grabs simply because it's renewable energy. That's not the case and never was the case. And hand on heart, I don't think it was. We have to have a balance, as was said, and if we go on as we are, my feeling is, without being selective, we could end up with a situation where we have loads of renewable energy, but guys, we can't grow any food because we haven't got any land left. I think there has to be a balance, and that was the point was made by the applicants. And I think in this case, we have agricultural land here. It's being used to grow crops regularly. That is important. Food security is important, and it has to be taken into account. Whatever NPF4 says, as I say, I don't believe the framers of that ever thought that it meant that every piece of agricultural land, prime or not, was just to be trumped and sacrificed on the altar of climate change. That was not what it was put in there for. And I think we're at a point now where we can be selective. So that was my thinking behind this. I think it was important that that comes across. So thank you, convener, for that moment.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's any amendment? No amendment. Ask if anyone has any comment. Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, convener. I'll try to be brief. I having listened to the objector and the applicants' agents putting forward a strong case, but equally the element of food security, particularly within Perthshire, is so important. And this policy that we have in our LDB3 is important, despite what the agents suggested to us. Equally, the other policies that officers have put forward as reasons for refusal. But what it does also make clear to us as a committee is where the rural aspect of MPF4 maybe just hasn't quite grasped everything that's happening within that space. And, you know, we've discussed that before, but anyway, I fully support the food security angle or prime agricultural food producing land. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As there is no amendment to the motion, planning permission is therefore refused. Thank you. We will now take a 5-minute recess. Thank you. Okay. Councillor James, are you there?
Yep, convener, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Frampton, Councillor Harvey have joined us. Can I ask if any two of you have any declarations of interest?
Yes, convener. Apologies firstly for joining late, and yeah, I have a declaration of interest for this next paper, so I'm going to sit this one out if that's acceptable.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Harvey, can you restate which one you have got a declaration of interest to?
Just give me 1 sec. Sorry, convener, for the apologies for the confusion. It's paper 5.2.1. One after this one.
Thank you for that. Okay then. Right, now we now move on. The next application, the major application is for the formation of a 49.9 megawatt battery energy storage facility comprising battery storage units, ancillary buildings and equipment, access road and associated works, land 300 metres west of Killen. To introduce the report is Mr. Panton.
Thank you, convener. So as stated, the next major application on the agenda today is for the formation of a 49.9 megawatt battery energy storage facility and associated works near Killen by Loch Tay. We are recommending approval of the application before you. Try that again. We are recommending approval of the application before you as we feel that the proposal complies with the relevant provisions of the development plan and there are no material considerations which justify a departure from the plan. I will now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. So here we can see the location of the site, which is to the north of Loch Tay and the A827 at the eastern end of the western end, approximately 2.2 kilometres from Killen. The site is approximately 1.9 hectares in size and is currently planted with young plantation woodland. Members should note that the two access points leading to the site are located within the Stirling Council area. Next slide, please. This plan shows exactly where the boundary between Perth and Kinross and Stirling Council is. The boundary is a dotted line that goes down the middle of the loch and then extends upwards through the site towards the mountains. Next slide, please. We now have a proposed site plan where you can see the general arrangement proposed. As you can see, it is proposed to have two access points to the development site. Next slide, please. We now have an elevation plan for the proposed battery units. As you can see, these are elevated from the ground to minimise water damage and to assist with cooling. Next slide, please. We now have elevations for the units themselves. Like the last application today, they appear like large storage containers in nature. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This plan now shows a section of the proposed security fencing and gate which will surround the site. Next slide, please. Officers were initially concerned at the landscaping proposed and sought amendments to the landscaping scheme. The plan on the slide now shows a revised landscaping plan, which will help to screen the development whilst also contributing positively to the biodiversity of the area. Next slide, please. This image shows a proposed visualisation of the site provided by the agent. The site is in the location of the pink oval. You can see here the relationship of the site to Loch Tay. I'll now take members through some photographs from my recent site visit to better show the context of the site. This first photograph shows existing access from the A827. This access point also leads to a residential property known as Fank Cottage. Next slide, please. This next photograph shows an existing pipeline which runs immediately adjacent to the access track. Next slide, please. This penultimate image shows the development site to the right of the track. The pipeline, which you just saw, would be immediately behind where this photograph was taken. Next image, please. This final image shows Fank Cottage, which shares the associated access track and would be the nearest residential property to the proposed development. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. That now concludes my presentation. I will leave members with the proposed site plan for reference.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. We do have deputations on this item as well, so I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputation procedures.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call on Ms. Robertson? Ms. Robertson is from Glen Lyon and Loch Tay Community Council, is objecting to the application. Good morning. You've got 5 minutes for your deputation. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. So yes, we would like to object to this application. Loch Tay is a jewel in the crown of Scotland. It's one of the most tranquil places you can visit, with a rich diversity of flora and fauna, outstanding natural beauty where people come to escape the noise and relax. Nearby, there's 3 SSSI designated sites of international importance. Loch Tay itself is a special area of conservation, and above the site is the National Nature Reserve of Ben Lawers, where they've been conducting 30 years of habitat restoration, which also is of national importance, if not international importance. There's some major issues with the plans. The first one, obviously, being the fire risk, which is pretty significant. Although these batteries that have been selected are have less likelihood of catching fire, it's still a distinct possibility. And what hasn't really been addressed is what would happen in the event of a fire. Hazardous chemicals would be released into the air, which would then obviously enter the waterways, straight down into the SSSI Loch Tay marshes and down into Loch Tay itself, which would be disastrous. We had a fire in Fortingal last year, which was devastated 5 properties. We had trouble with the fire crew being voluntary, and it took over an hour and a quarter for the first fire truck to arrive, another 3/4 of an hour before the second fire truck arrived. It was reported as having 8 units in attendance, but in the reality of that was it took 4 hours before all 8 of those were actually assembled. So in the event of a fire at this battery site, we can't really see that there would be anything in place to prevent fire from exploding and the batteries achieving this state of thermal runaway, which is extremely hazardous. There also doesn't seem to be a very clear firefighting plan for what the process is in the case of a battery energy storage facility fire, other than to try and stop it spreading, which doesn't seem like a very comprehensive plan. The track itself is also 4 meters wide, which would mean that there's not enough room for 2 fire trucks, if we could manage to find 2 fire trucks, for them to pass. Also, any water that was used would have to be collected and tankered away very promptly. It says in the fire water plan in the application that they've yet to arrange collection with a local hazardous waste removal service, which I'm pretty sure there isn't anywhere near the site. Also, noise is going to be an issue. The fact that there's noise mitigation being written into the plan at the outset means that if it did turn out to be a lot noisier than expected, there wouldn't be much to fall back on to further reduce the levels of noise. Due to the geology, the geographic area, I'm new to planning, so excuse me if I'm not quite getting all the terms right. The loch has a very interesting way of conducting sound, and I've been down at the edge of Loch Tay many times, and it's quite confusing. You can hear conversations, and it's from the other side of the loch. So the noise on a still day or a still night will travel right across the loch much further than you would expect. And I'm pretty sure that's going to cause some issues for the nearby houses. Also, for wildlife, there's a lot of studies being done which indicate that low frequencies affect the migratory, any animals that migrate. So fish, you've got anything that relies on geomagnetics for I should have written this down a little bit more clearly. So bats, bees, fish and migratory birds are all affected by these low frequencies. And given that it's in an area surrounded by wildlife, I don't think that would be a great addition to the area. The roads as well, the A827 is a very small road. There's also another great big development at Loch Tay Highland Lodges, just slightly further along the road. So visualising the traffic from this as well as the traffic from that is going to cause an absolute nightmare. Oh, is it? Right.
Are you members? Ms. Robertson is willing to take questions. Please populate the chat function. Councillor Brun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you for your deputation. Coming back to this question about fire. Sorry, this is working here. So going back to the question about fire, I'm not sure whether the entity of fire comes under us. I think there might be a building regulation side, but we'll cover that with officers. But you were talking about access. Is there a problem getting, assuming there was a fire, and obviously we hope never is, but and we can never say there would be one, but is there a problem getting access for the fire tenders to the actual site? You talked about timing for getting in another fire. Although it's fighting the fire is another thing altogether, but is there a problem in your mind of getting the fire tenders into the area because of the size of roads?
Did I put that on? The track is 4 metres wide, which wouldn't be enough for 2 fire trucks to pass each other. In the event of a fire, the water would need to be removed as it would be contaminated and would need to be tankered away very quickly, because obviously as much water is coming in will need to be taken away to avoid runoff down into the marshes. And 4 metre wide track wouldn't allow for that.
Ms. Robertson, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Mr. Rosenberg is an applicant, is coming, deputation is by phone. You might have to *6 to unmute your phone, Mr. Rosenberg. Good morning,
Hello.
Mr. Good morning. You're coming through. You have 5 minutes for your deputation. Whenever you start, I'll start the clock.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Alexander Mijimal, Project Manager at OPD Energy. I'm here to present and defend our planning application for a battery storage site. Our proposal aligns with both local and national sustainability goals to achieve the net zero climate change and energy independency of the country. Batteries clearly cannot go anywhere around the country. the proposal had to go through careful site selection strategy based primarily on the proximity to existing infrastructure with existing capacity and the need for a balancing system mechanism, and then a site that complies with planning restrictions, as there are no objections from any statutory consultee. This project will connect directly through an underground cable into the new Keelan substation, which is to the west of the site. We've conducted thorough assessments and engaged with stakeholders to ensure the project respects the landscape. All equipment can be painted green to reduce the visual impact as possible. Noise, sound barriers are being proposed to prevent noise from traveling. Biodiversity, the ecology enhancements propose to ensure a 10% positive during the construction and operation of the battery storage site. The design incorporates mitigation measures to preserve the visual amenity and to enhance ecology value. This project will contribute to Scotland's net zero targets and also to bring economic benefits to the region through job creation, local investment, and long-term energy resilience. This is a temporary project, which is planned to be commissioned at the end of its operation, and the land will be restored back to its original situation. We are committed and have worked transparently and in collaboration with the council and the community throughout the development process, where we have proved to uplift all the consultee holding objections received during the process. I respectfully ask for your support in approving this application following the case officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. Are you willing to take questions from members?
Yes, that's okay.
Good. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg, for your deputation. Towards the end of your presentation, you spoke about jobs. How many jobs will arise, and how many of those will be available to local people? Thank you.
I don't know the exact number of numbers, but there are several items of the project that can be used with local work and material, such as the tracks, fencing, CCTV, security, planting. So there are many items that can be, and we prefer to hire with local contractors.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Vice Convener, and thank you, Mr. Rosenberg, for your presentation. You might have heard one of the objectors' comments regarding the fire risk from this battery storage. I wonder if you could talk us through what that risk is and what mitigation measures or planning as regards that you've taken into account. Thanks.
So a battery going on fire, there is a possibility, like with anything. It's true that it's a technology that is evolving very quickly in efficiency and security. The probability of it going on fire is very low. You can see batteries in our cars, you can see batteries in our houses, you can see batteries everywhere. We wouldn't put these things, even in our pocket. Smaller size, but we don't think we're going to put in our pocket something that's going to explode. Said that, I think it's not a planning item to cover the fire itself, but we have in the past agreed with councils for fire mitigation measures, management plans as a condition. So if this is something you would like to add, we're more than happy to provide more information on that basis.
Yeah, just to follow up. Yeah, it is. I mean, it is part of how we're making the consideration here, and I think even though, as you say, the risk is fairly low, the risk is still there. And as one of the objectors pointed out, there is an issue maybe with that. So I think you need to have a look at that in a bit more depth. Thanks.
Yes, we did. So there is a fire water management plan as part of the planning application. There is also a drainage strategy to keep any type of run out of the site fully, to avoid any type of run out of the site. But if any further fire plan was required, we're happy to provide it.
Bailey McLaren.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Yeah, my question is regarding the maintenance or, inspection of the batteries. We have a concern about noise impact from the local community, and that's right for us to address and think about that. But also, I would like to understand how the owners of the batteries will check at what point they require replace, maintenance, whatever. So could you maybe just give us a broader understanding of how that is carried out?
Yes, so these projects work remotely. All the facilities will have all type of alarms, which we connected to our operations and maintenance board. So if any alarm is set up, we would immediately address it. And with regards to noise, originally we submitted a noise impact assessment, which wasn't agreed by the council. So we proposed mitigation measures to avoid and to comply with noise policy to the nearest resident, which are around 250 meters away, the nearest.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Vice Convener. I'd like to take a step back a wee bit here, if possible. I'm trying to work out where the power's coming from, where it's going, why this site was picked, because it's very remote. Being so remote, if there is a fire, getting a fire engine to the site is going to take a long time, for example. So why pick this site, and just how exactly is it going to work?
So the first step of the project is to look to find where there's capacity in the grid. We learned that there was capacity in Killin substation. So we start searching around this substation. There weren't many alternatives. The area is very constrained, the topography. We prefer not to develop sites near to resident areas because, as you are aware, people get very concerned with these things if they're near to their houses. So we found a landowner that had a piece of land that was in principle acceptable for our planning constraints, and we progressed with the project. It's far enough so that the project is viable with an underground cable, but it couldn't go much further away.
Councillor James.
Thanks, Vice Convener, and thanks for your deputation. I'm just going back to the sound again. As somebody that once had some property on the opposite side of the loch, I agree with the deputy who said that noise carries up through the loch tay, acts like a venturi. Could I ask, because we've had problems elsewhere with noise from battery storage units, is the equipment within this project going to be attenuated at all, please? The base.
Yes, so as explained previously, we have provided mitigation measures for noise. The noise producers will be attenuated. They won't be working at their 100%. What makes noise are the cooling fans. So we have agreed with the manufacturer a process so that they create the less noise possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Rosenberg, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask if committee have any questions for officers? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Just to follow up on the question I asked the developer there as well as regards the fire risk, I notice within the papers there's no real mention of that. What's your expectations if this were to go ahead of what would be submitted by them? And is there any other statutory bodies, i.e. the HSE, that need to look into this?
Yeah, I'll maybe cover that. So probably in short, the Scottish Government has produced guidance on battery energy storage systems and how planning authorities should be considering that. And in relation to that, in relation to fire safety, planning authorities are not the appropriate authority for doing that. That the established principle is that we should not duplicate other regulatory regimes, and it's not the role of the planning authority to regulate fire risk. Rather, designers, installers and operators of battery energy storage systems have a legal responsibility to comply with all relevant and applicable health and safety legislation which applies out with the planning system. There is a lot of information within that document on how various things should be considered, and it doesn't appear that the approach taken here lies out with the guidance produced by the Scottish Government.
Just as a follow-up, it seemed to recall the HSE being a statutory or consultee before. Did I misremember that, or is that a different case?
Only in certain circumstances. So, yeah, not in this case.
Sorry, Councillor Harvey, we consult HSE when a pipeline goes under the site. That's maybe what the confusion arises from.
Thank you. Phelan McLaren.
Thank you. My question is regarding the noise impact assessment. Are you content that it's taken in a wide enough area, given that the landscape and, as we've heard, the other side of the law conversations, and I understand that, we know different weather factors come into play, but is it that we maybe would consider putting a condition in to have an updated, wider noise impact assessment as a condition?
Lynn, can you answer that?
Yeah, we are satisfied that the noise impact assessment ensures that the amenity of residentials will not be affected. With regards to noise transversing over to the loch, there is going to be an acoustic barrier at the southern boundary of the site, so that would stop any noise therefore transferred over the loch to the other side. And the closest residential property, the external noise level after mitigation was going to be 33 dB. So that would mean an internal of 20 dB. So we are absolutely satisfied that the noise has been mitigated to a satisfactory level.
Thanks, Lynn. Just can I come back and ask, do they then, once it's all installed and up and running, provide an actual impact assessment when it's sorted out? Because this is on what is likely to happen.
No, we have a condition set that if there is any justified noise complaints after it's operational, then the applicant must do a further noise impact assessment.
Thank you, Lynn. Councillor Braun, I'll let you ask your first question.
Yep, thanks, Convener. When we saw the photographs, there was a pipeline, which I presume is a gas pipeline. I thought I'd read something in here. I can't find it now, but it is very, very close to the track access, which and the objector was talking about fire engines going up there if anything happened like that. But it could be anything. It would be very easy for a vehicle to collide with that pipe, I would think, in the dark. An emergency, of course, but are we not concerned? The question is, are we not concerned about the closeness of the pipeline to the track from a safety issue?
Thanks, Councillor Braun. So first of all, that one's a hydro pipeline. associated with a hydro scheme that's there. But nevertheless, we still don't want anything crashing into it. I went for a site visit to this one myself. It is quite clear. You've got the track, it's wide enough. There's then like a ditch and then it's the pipe. So if you were a bad driver, shall we say, you'd end up in the ditch rather than the pipeline. But the pipe is quite obvious. It shouldn't be missed even in dark hours.
Thank you. I will now ask my question. My question is that you mentioned about Stirling Council being part of Stirling Council area. What are the implications for that if we, whatever decision we do, if they do the opposite, what's the implications?
Yeah, that's a fair question, convener. So the applicant in this occasion is also required to obtain consent from Stirling Council, and you'll see condition 3 of our recommendation says no development shall commence on site until all the relevant consents from Stirling Council have been secured. So if Stirling Council refused the application for their boundary, this wouldn't be able to go ahead. It would need both us and Stirling to approve, and condition 3 will protect that.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. Sorry to come back on this one, but we've heard firsthand about the difficulties in getting fire tenders to attend a fire in the area. Surely fire risk must be a material consideration, although it might not be one that's directly due to our planning consideration.
Again, I would say that that is a matter that is controlled via other regulatory regimes.
I would point out there is a fire station in Killin itself, which is only a few kilometres from the site. The nearest fire stations after that are Cree and Larach, which is a further 22 miles, and Aberfeldy in the other direction, which is 24. But there is a fire station in Killin.
Thank you. Councillor Braun, you can ask your next 2 questions.
You've asked one for me, convener, so that's the only one left now. It comes back to the question of sound. Obviously, it's a concern for everybody, and as Councillor James says, it can carry across water. Is it feasible to request an acoustic fence to be put around the site within the landscape boundary? So between the batteries and the landscape, would it help? I mean, is it something that could help the sound?
I think Lynn said that there was going to be a barrier, but Lynn, can you answer that?
Yeah, there is a barrier, and it is conditioned that there's a barrier on the southern boundary and the eastern boundary of the site.
Councillor Frampton.
Thank you. Can a decision on this be deferred until Stirling Council makes a decision?
I wouldn't consider that to be competent just because we have that condition applied. Because if Stirling Council took the same approach, for example, let's wait and see what PKC say, would be in a catch-22. So given that we have the majority in our site and we've got that condition, I wouldn't consider it to be competent on that occasion.
Thank you. Councillor Illingworth.
Thank you. Do you consider that this site will be noisier than the power station by the loch?
Lynn, can you answer that?
Well, I can't really, because I don't know what the power station noise levels are at the site. But all I can say is that after mitigation, that we are satisfied that at the closest residential 33 dB, and that is 250 metres away from the actual development site. So the internal levels will only be 20, so there will be no disturbance to sleep, even during the nighttime period. And the fact that they're putting in mitigation with regards to acoustic fencing, and also inverters will have acoustic kits to them as well. We are satisfied that this site will not cause, will ensure that the residential amenity will be met.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. To the officers, as we heard from the objector, the community council, the whole of the Loch Tay area is a bit of a jewel in the crown. What is our consideration with regards to visual amenity and how this will affect that? Thank you.
So first of all, I would absolutely agree with the lady from the Community Council and yourselves. Loch Tay is without a doubt a jewel in the crown, and not just Perth and Kinross in Scotland. And that's one of the reasons I decided to do a site visit for this one myself. When you look at this on plan form, you immediately look at this and think, that's quite close to Loch, that's going to be really intrusive. But actually, when you get to the site, you can't see it from the A827. You go off up the track, you've already got the industrialisation there from that hydro pipe that we've spoken about. The topography of the land there, it does sit quite well round the back. So whilst, yes, if you've got a helicopter, this will be visible, for the average person going along the A827, it's not going to be highly visible. And I don't think it'll detract from the qualities that make it the jewel in the crown.
Thank you for that. Is there any view on whether we can see it or whether it would spoil any view from the loch itself?
Yes, so you may remember in my presentation, when this application was originally submitted, we weren't satisfied at the proposed landscaping to help screen this over time. We just thought there could have been that little bit more, so we requested that. We made sure it was native species as well to blend in. So over time, the landscaping will also help to ensure that any visual impact is mitigated.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Convener. I'm just wondering how effective acoustic fencing is on a hillside, because it's quite a steeply sloping site, this, I think. So could the acoustic fencing actually become rather intrusive because it's a fence in the middle of an open countryside rather than trees or something like that?
Well, I'll let Lynn answer on the effectiveness on the topography, but in terms of the landscaping, like I was saying, from the A827, because of the topography of the site and the existing industrialisation that's already there from the pipeline, I don't think a fence would be intrusive. Actually, the fence will be able to help screen the units themselves, I would say, but I'll pass over to Lynn, who can confirm effectiveness on hillside locations.
The acoustic barrier, they take into consideration the topography. So the acoustic barrier will be 3.5 metres height, and that would be taken in the topography of the area to ensure that the noise does not go over the top of the acoustic barrier. And there'll be no gaps in it at all as well to ensure that noise doesn't go underneath it as well.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, convener. Just on your visit, a wee bit cheeky here, but did you do any of the Munros to check the views from the top of the Munros, Sean, when you were there?
Well, I didn't myself, but when you saw one of the visualizations that was in the presentation earlier, that wasn't from a Munro, but it was from the hill at the back. And you could see within that presentation, once the landscaping's in, it's not highly intrusive, but I haven't done the Munros myself, not in a long time.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions. Can I ask for a motion? Councillor James.
Thanks, convener. It kind of pains me, this really, because I'm not a fan of battery storage units or many of the green energy projects that we're faced with. However, on this occasion, I think our officers have done due diligence. They've looked into it correctly. I'm satisfied with the attenuation, for the sound, because I do know that Loch Tay does suffer quite badly with sound travelling up that loch. We had a plot down near the marina, and you can hear the slightest sound on some days. So I think with the mitigation measures put in place and conditions, I can't see a reason to turn it down. So I'm happy to go with our officer's recommendation. Further to that, convener, I felt that if we were to turn this down, it would go to Scottish Government and be overturned. At least we have the opportunity making the decision ourselves to place conditions ourselves. So yes, I'll go with our officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bailey McLaren, you wish to second?
Convener, thank you. Yes, I'm content to second, pretty much echoing what Councillor James has said. Our officers have explained fully as all about the the concerns that the communities have raised, fire, noise. So I'm content to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have an amendment? No amendment. Does the committee have any comment on the report? Comment on the report, therefore planning permission is granted. Thank you. Now move swiftly on. We're now on to 5.2, which is local application. Councillor Harvey. Thank you. So the first local application today is for part change of use of an artificial insemination centre to form a distillery at Glencar Stud Farm, Cotton Town, Glencar. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Convener. The first local application on the agenda relates to the conversion of existing authorised commercial property to form a small-scale distillery on a site at Cotton House, the east of St Meadows. This application is before members today in light of the receipt of 7 letters of objection, which are summarised in paragraph 26 of the report. However, fundamentally, concerns were raised in respect of road safety, drainage and flooding, impacts on residential amenity via noise and odour in particular. While those concerns have been noted, the submission of additional information in respect of traffic movements and also noise and odour assessments have given reassurance that this relatively small-scale operation is deemed to be compliant with the relevant policies of the development plan and could be adequately controlled by planning conditions listed within the report. I'll now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Next slide, please. Here we can see the location of the site, which is to the east of St Meadows at Cawtown. The access to the site is taken off the C484, which leads through to Errol and beyond. The access track itself serves a total of 17 residential properties, plus those at Cotton House and the site, which benefits from planning permission for a further 4 dwellings. The site is characterised by the elongated nature of the access track, leading to the setting of Cotton House with more mature landscaped ground in its vicinity. Next slide, please. Here we see a slightly enhanced aerial image, which gives a clearer indication as to the general density of residential plots in the area and the general separation between the application site and the nearest residential receptors. The former stables is the westmost building, where, while as the insemination building is the northmost property. Next slide, please. This plan, while admitting the lines may be faint on the screen, shows the site layout with the 2 existing buildings centrally located and the applicant's property, Cawtown House, to the south. Oakdean is the nearest residential dwelling, approximately 40 metres to the west. At the north of the land, outlined in blue, is the 4 plots which benefit from planning permission, with 1 having been built and 3 at a basic level of commencement. Next slide, please. We now have the respective floor plans. On the left-hand side is the floor plan for the distillery, while on the right is the floor plan for the bonded warehouse, which would be within the same structure as some existing short-term lets. Next slide, please. We now have the elevations for the respective buildings. In terms of external alterations, the most noticeable alterations would be the addition of flues to serve the distillery itself. And I'll now take members through some photographs from my recent site visit to better show the context of the site. Next slide, please. Yeah. First photograph shows the existing access from the C484, with a bus stop located immediately at the junction with the public road. Next slide, please. Here we see the respective visibility displays to the west on the left-hand side and to the east on the right. Next slide, please. These penultimate images show the view northwards from halfway down the track on the left, with a further view northwards from closer to the entrance to the Cawtown House site itself, and near an existing passing place on the right. Next image, please. And these final images show the view southwards into the Cawtown House entrance, with the access to Oakdean visible in the left-hand picture, while the right-hand image shows the insemination centre with Cawtown House beyond, set within a mature landscape setting. Next slide, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation. However, should members be minded to approve this application, please note there is a slight error within condition 2 relating to the avoidance of impacts on the core path. It states that any damage should be made good prior to the occupation of the dwelling house, where in fact it should state prior to the commencement of use instead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. And we do have deputations on this item as well. So I'll now hand over to the Vice Convener for the deputation procedure.
Thank you, Convener. Can I call on Mr. Porter, objector to the application? Mr. Porter, I'm sure you're aware of the procedure now. You've got 5 minutes. You're also very tall. Could I request that you pull the mic? Yeah, thank you. I'll start the clock whenever you start.
Good morning. I was very disappointed that the various objections were not upheld by the planning department. As the gentleman said, we have concerns over the noise, odours, but more importantly, the road itself. When he was going through the slides, he mentioned a passing place. There are in fact no passing places on that road. What he was showing you was an entrance into a small cut-off that goes into the back where there are a couple of houses. The road is unmade, very narrow, and used by a lot of pedestrians, joggers, dog walkers, such like. It's not built for commercial traffic. The condition of the road is quite good just now, and as shown in these pictures, because the residents have undertaken various works. But it deteriorates very quickly in wet weather, and particularly over the winter. And heavy commercial vehicles, which will be needed for this distillery to deliver goods, take away the product, take away waste in tankers and all the rest of it, will create a lot of damage. Mr. Kazakis got permission for 4 houses in 2015. And at that time, one of the conditions was that he had to make up the road to an adoptable standard before he started building. There were a lot of objections to his application at that time, and he bought off these objections by promising to do the road up. When he started building, or started the groundworks, just prior to the 5-year period, I got in touch with the council and was told that the condition had been changed to him not having to do the road up until the 4th house was occupied, and then only to an acceptable standard, which is a very vague term. In light of what the planning department have said, I've no doubt that the committee will go along with that, but I would ask that a condition be placed on that the road be upgraded to a proper standard, an adoptable standard, within a reasonable time. And I would suggest perhaps either before the distillery becomes operational or within 2 years, whichever is the earliest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Are you willing to take questions from members?
Yes.
Members, if you could populate the chat function. Mr. Porter, there appears to be no questions. You're free to go. Get a call on Mr. Perney, objector. Mr. Purney not in attendance. Thank you, Mr. Porter. We've just been informed that Mr. Porter is abroad, so convener, there's no further questions on this deputations on this application. I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask members have any questions for officers? Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Convener. Mr. Williamson, would it be competent to put in a condition to upgrade the road? I'll leave it vague at that moment. Would it be competent either prior to commencing building work or prior to operation of the distillery? Keep it general. Is it competent to put a condition of that sort in?
Thank you, Councillor Braun. I'll perhaps bring in Lachlan to comment a little bit further in respect of Road's view as to the proposals, but clearly the existing authorised use had an associated level of traffic with it as well. Clearly, yes, there was the requirement to put in the road to an enhanced standard as part of the permission for the houses as well. But I think there is a comment within the committee report as well with regard to the need to add conditions again, and Roads didn't think it was necessary, but if Lachlan wouldn't mind coming in.
Thanks, Paul. It is noted that there was a previous condition on the planning applications. If you look at paragraph 69 of the report, it does mention that there was proposed surfacing works, and obviously the trigger for that hasn't been met because the section 42 application had come in. I mean, if you felt it was appropriate to have some surfacing works undertaken in advance or within a set time period, that probably could be accommodated within the condition, subject to Paul maybe drafting something there.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener. For the avoidance of doubt, is this to be a whisky?
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Just to confirm that the distillery itself would be looking to produce vodka, gin, whiskey, rum and arak. And before I get asked on that, it's a Middle Eastern spirit.
Thank you for that. So my question is, having seen the photographs, all the buildings around the site appear to be of a white finish. What mitigations are we putting in, or what conditions are we putting in to stop the release of angel share and those buildings becoming black? Thank you.
I think I would perhaps draw a distinction with the scale of development in this instance and the level of storage that is ultimately within the buildings. It will be quite limited from that perspective. As such, there's no formal mitigation from that side proposed. But certainly I don't know if Lynn had any further comment from an environmental health perspective.
Again, just to reiterate what Paul said, you know, it is a very, very small brewery, and I think it was only going to be like a 50% fermentation process connected with it. So we didn't raise any concerns with regards to angel shares or any of the mold associated with that.
Thank you, Councillor James. Oh, just a second, Councillor James. Right, Councillor Allen.
Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just to come back, it's in the plan that was shared at the outset. There is a bonded warehouse, which means there will be the storage of whiskey barrels in there. So there will be angel share. What mitigations or what conditions can we put in to stop that? Thank you.
I think, again, the advice to you is from our environmental health service, there's not required to be any mitigations. I'd also maybe just clarify again that there are various different spirits, not just whisky. The volume of each is very small relative to maybe what might be experienced in more significant distilleries and bonded warehouses. But our advice is, via environmental health, there is no requirement for any mitigations in relation to the release of any vapours causing discoloration.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, convener. My question is really, I suppose, for Lachlan. And I know this is, going to be a small production, but I'm just thinking future proofing. And it's already been mentioned, Lachlan, about a lack of passing places for cars too. So are you happy with the state of that road, as in, usability, if it's a single track, for a commercial operation at the end of it?
Thank you. I mean, in terms of, we have had predicted traffic volumes presented to us by the applicant, and they're predicting 1 vehicle in the peak hour in the morning and then potentially 4 in the PM. Now, that's not to say there will be other vehicle movements. That's primarily related to the staff who will be on site. So other movements that we will have going to and from the site is deliveries of grain, removal of grain. We've also got the effluent removal that's been mentioned by one of the objectives as well. So the applicant has given us a rough indication of number of delivery vehicles that are expected on site. So in terms of vans, we're expecting 6 to 7 per week going to and from the site. And in terms of HGV movements, we're not expecting them to be very high. They are estimating 1 truck per month going to the site. So I think in terms of that, we're fairly comfortable with the level of movements that are anticipated with the development.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions, then can I ask for a motion? Motion from Councillor Braun.
Yes, thanks, convener. I move the paper virtually as it is, taking into account the amendment to conditions 2, which I think Mr. Williamson mentioned. But I'd also like to add a condition or adapt a condition along the lines that no works can commence, no development or conversion works can commence until the road is brought up to an adoptable standard. You might want to adjust the wording of that, but that was we spoke this with Lachlan, so that would be my amendment to what we've got there. Or an enhanced standard.
I was just going to come in. It's generally the approach that we would take would be that we would be allowing of construction movements and activity to take place, and it's only upon the commencement of the use that would maybe have the full upgrade to take place. So it's just whether or not there's flexibility from that perspective.
My thoughts were that we'd had this condition in the previous paper and it's been moved back now. And I would think that in the instance of that, it would be better to say prior to commencement. But if your advice is that it would be a better condition to do it the way you're saying, that's fine. I think the important thing is to get the road back up to an adoptable standard. So I take advice from Mr. McLeod perhaps on this and yourselves.
Maybe just give some comment, Councillor Braun, that the buildings exist. They have an existing authorised use. The advice is that there is no significant change to the loading that would result on that. So I'd maybe ask you to give consideration to what change is occurring as a result of this application. It seems that advice from road officers is there is no change. So what is the materiality of requiring an upgrade to the road on the existing use of that road?
I think the thought is that the applicant has promised this upgrade prior to this, and it hasn't been done. There will be more traffic, I think, going up and down to it. People working there, and I'm happy to take Mr. Williamson's advice that we do it prior to the commencement of the operation of the business. So that's a fair comment. I would take that. But I do feel that there needs to be something in here to ensure this road is enhanced because as it stands at the moment, I understand it won't be done until the fourth house is built, which could be who knows when. But I suspect that the applicant going through this process wants to start the distillery running. I think it would be fair to the people who live nearby that this condition is put in place, because there could and may well be damage to the road in bad weather. So if it's competent, it's competent, I would like that condition put in, but I'm going to have to take advice from you now.
Thank you, Councillor Braun. I think it comes back to this point of the lack of increased use to the road, I suppose, and on the basis of the transport statement, but also of the transport planners, I think they are content with the position as it is in respect of the existing condition. Whether it's a requirement, I would have concerns about that in a sense, because I think it is ultimately already contained within the conditions that it's, I think we're covered on that point. I'm not sure whether this is particularly required, but if you did wish to move it, I suppose with the transport planners, if they were able to consider a wording, that might be something that could be incorporated into your motion. But we would need to obviously work that out as and when it comes to that point, I suppose, of the issuing of the notice. Yeah, possibly competent, yes, but whether it's the most robust, I suppose that's the consideration.
My point will be that Mr. McLean did say that he had no thoughts. He seemed there was no problem in putting it in when the question was asked. So I think for the benefit of everybody, I think it would be an ideal condition to be put in. I think for the benefit of the people who live there, but I'm happy to change it to the point that it is in prior to commencement of operation. Certainly, I'm happy with that. Subject to the appropriate wording, of course.
Councillor James, you wish to second? Excuse me, yes. Councillor James, just give me a second again. Councillor Allen, is that a point of clarity or is it a comment? A comment, you've got the chance to comment later. It's not a comment, okay.
If at all possible, I would like a condition that the applicant makes good on any damage as a result of angel share effect. If there is no damage, there's no problem. If there is damage, we've taken the responsible step. Thank you.
Councillor Allen, that would be when I ask for an amendment, then you could put that in as an amendment to the motion. Okay. Bailey McLaren, you've got a point of clarity.
Yeah, sorry, convener. I don't know if this is how to put this forward particularly, but conversations about asking one resident within a road area to bring a road up to an adoptable standard. That's quite a burden to put on one property. And I would make a presumption that other properties in that area have a duty towards maintaining the road. So I don't know how, if that makes that even more or less competent as a condition. And I would kind of, before I decide which way I'm going to go in this, it may not have been, apologies if I've done this the wrong way.
No, certainly from that perspective, and Lachlan has been exceptionally helpful, as always, by going and extracting the wordings of the previous conditions that were attached in respect to the 4 dwelling houses. And they referred to, and I quote, precise details of the proposed design and specification of the proposed surfacing works, including surface water drainage, to the existing private access and details of turning areas, etc., shall be submitted to. So it wasn't to the level of adoptable standards. So it was acknowledging that there would be difficulties therein and getting it to that level, because obviously that would involve significant road widening, etc. So I would be seeking and suggesting to follow suit if that was the line that members wanted to go down.
Okay, thank you. Councillor James, sorry, you wish to second.
Got there in the end, convener. Yes, I'll second, and I take Councillor Braun's point. The fact of the matter was that this was a condition put on the housing for houses, or changed to the after the fourth house is built. What's to say he's actually ever going to build the fourth house? So I think this is just strengthening the fact or the upgrade to a road. So I'd be more than happy to second Councillor Braun's motion with the inclusion of the upgrade to the road, shall we say, or invoking the condition on that, the housing. I don't know why that was extended out, but something along those lines. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, you wish to put an amendment in?
Thank you, convener. Yes. Having worked in this area and seen the damage that this can do, I would like a condition included that any damage as a result of Angel Share is made good by the applicant. Thank you.
The only aspect I would flag in that regard, and I wholeheartedly accept the reasoning behind your suggestion, is from a perspective of meeting the 6 tests when it comes to conditions, it is the ability for us to adequately demonstrate that any deterioration in paint finish is as a consequence of this development, as opposed to just other climatic factors, therein rendering us with a particularly difficult situation and being able to confirm exactly whether it's, attributed to Angel Share or not.
It won't just be the houses, it'll be the trees, it'll be the fence posts, it'll be everything, it'll be apparent.
I think that the issue, and again, I understand what you're saying, is that it wouldn't be able to comply with the tests relative to a planning condition. So we feel that it wouldn't be appropriate to apply it. If a condition such as that was applied, we might be found foul of those relevant tests if challenged on that through an appeal for that condition. So our advice is that's not an appropriate condition.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? No seconder forthcoming. The amendment falls. I will put an amendment myself. My amendment is quite basic, that we listen to the officer's report and grant planning permission as the report says. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Illingworth.
Happy to second, convener.
Do members have any comment on the report? No comment on the report. Sorry, Councillor James. Councillor James, you can't comment. You can't comment, Councillor James.
It's a question or point of clarity, actually, convener. I should have put a POC. Sorry.
Okay.
As you've gone back to the original motion, the condition on the housing for the upgrade on the road, which is to be done after the 4th house, I don't know how to word this without it sounding wrong. How can we invoke that the upgrade to the road then, convener? Because this application has been commented on by the general public on the understanding that that road will be upgraded, and seemingly this isn't. So I'm just sorry to make it awkward.
Maybe to give some clarification, so the condition relative to the 4 houses and the upgrading of the road to an appropriate standard remains, and will be, using your word, invoked once that 4th house is completed. In the case of this proposal, it's the view of officers, whether that be planning officers or officers from our transport planning team, that there is no additional loading on the road as a result of the change of use of the building from existing authorised use. Therefore, no further upgrade or improvement to the road is required. So I think that's the two different differentiations between the points. The condition requiring the upgrade of the road for additional loading as a result of 4 houses remains. There is no evidence of additional loading associated to this application, given the existing approved uses of the property. Therefore, no upgrade is considered to be required by the transport planning team.
Thanks, Convener. Not really much more to say. I think I just feel that this road needs to be enhanced prior to the works. They're still working. I think that yes, there is an existing condition in place, but that's dependent on the 4th house being built. And I would suspect the distillery will be coming a lot sooner. So I think this needs to be brought into this now to satisfy everybody on that road. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now hand over to Mr. MacLeod for the voting procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So we have a motion to grant the application subject to the imposition of all recommendations with oral conditions as recommended by the report, and the additional amendment to condition 2. That's proposed by Councillor Braun and seconded by Councillor Ian James, with the added amendment to condition in respect of bringing the access up to a particular standard, which the exact wording of which will be liaised with between the planning department and Councillor Braun in respect of the bringing up to an adoptable standard. I
think the word was enhanced standard.
Enhanced standard. So yeah, bringing the road up to an enhanced standard. So that's, like I say, the motion to grant with that additional condition. We also have an amendment to approve the application, but with the recommendations fully contained within the Council's officers' report, and that's been moved by Councillor Massey and seconded by Councillor Illingworth. So we have a motion to grant, an amendment to grant, but the motion to grant has that additional requirement that the condition is amended to review the road and bring the access up to an enhanced standard. So motion to grant with that condition, amendment to grant also, but with the conditions contained within the report of handling. And I'll pass over to Ms Brown for the roll call vote.
Oh, it's me.
Thank you. In terms of standing orders, we'll now move to roll call vote. When I call out your name, if you can advise whether you're voting for the motion by Councillor Braun and Councillor James, or the amendment by Councillor Massey and Councillor Illingworth. Councillor Allen.
Having made my position clear, I abstain.
Councillor Braun.
Motion.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Motion.
Councillor Frampton.
Amendment.
Councillor Illingworth.
Amendment.
Councillor James.
Motion.
Councillor Massey.
Amendment.
Bailey McLaren.
Motion.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
And Councillor Waters.
Amendment.
We have 4 votes for the motion and 5 votes for the amendment. Therefore, the amendment will carry.
Thank you for that. Therefore, planning permission is therefore granted with the rewording of condition 2 included. Thank you. Yeah, can we take a 5-minute recess? Okay. Councillor James, are you there?
Patiently waiting, convener.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to the second local application, which is for the erection of staff accommodation unit, amenity buildings, cafe, formation of outdoor seating area, car park and associated works, Moor of Rannoch Hotel, Rannoch. To introduce the report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, convener. The next local application today relates to the provision of enhanced facility provision at the Moor of Rannoch Hotel at the remote Rannoch station near the edge of the PKC boundary. The proposal seeks to provide a staff accommodation unit together with an amenity building and cafe to supplement and expand upon their existing offering at this remote destination site. As outlined in the report, the existing operation is as a destination restaurant with the capacity for 18 guests for dinner each evening, with only 5 guest bedrooms. The demand has risen at the location, and the applicants having extended their opening period for an additional 3 months of the year, as opposed to the historical 7 months. The application is before members today in light of the receipt of 10 letters of objection, which are summarised in paragraph 36 of the report. Concerns raised were in respect of visual impact, inappropriate scale and design, loss of car parking, impacts on the road network, no justification for staff accommodation, and smell and litter. Furthermore, there were also 17 letters of support, highlighting the benefits of the proposal and support for expansion. Despite the concerns raised, the proposal has been considered against the relevant policies of the development plan. Strong support is given to proposals which diversify an existing business, particularly those in remote rural areas. As outlined in the report, the ability to attract staff to the business is an area of particular difficulty, and this proposal would help to ensure that the business can diversify and prosper without undue impacts on its closest neighbours. As such, with the ability to control occupancy of the staff accommodation to the existing business, as well as the other conditions listed within the report, the proposal is deemed to accord with the relevant policies of the development plan. I'll now take members through a short presentation to detail the proposals further. Next slide, please. Here we can see the location of the site in this exceptionally remote part of Highland Perthshire. The site is at the edge of the grouping of property at Rannoch Station, which itself is accessed by either rail or by the B846, which connects Rannoch to Bridge of Gore and Loch Rannoch. Next slide, please. Here we see a slightly enhanced aerial image, which gives a clearer indication as to the pattern of development at Rannoch Station, with the hotel being the largest building within the red zone centrally. The nearest residential building is Station Cottage, approximately 30 metres west of the application site boundary, and across the road leading to the station car park and other dwellings within this small hamlet. Next slide, please. This plan shows the site layout with the new staff accommodation and cafe located to the west of the hotel, on the position of the existing parking and on the site of previous buildings. It also shows the provision of a drainage solution to the south over the road and the formation of the car parking and associated landscaping to the east of the hotel building. Next slide, please. We now have the elevations for the proposal. As outlined in the report, the staff accommodation would be constructed from modular accommodation painted white, with a further grey timber lining to the exterior. The scale of the proposal would be subservient to that of the adjacent hotel. Next slide, please. We now have sections of the proposal which illustrate the height of the new building, which would be below that of the existing hotel, and also how the proposal site benefits from the backdrop of existing trees and a mature landscape on land rising to the north. Next slide, please. We now have a further section which shows how the upper level of staff accommodation would be cantilevered out over the ground floor and the creation of the small courtyard area at the frontage. Next slide, please. We now have a typical floor plan for one of each of the 5 staff accommodation units. The ground floor is a 20-foot container comprising the bedroom and shower room, while the upper floor is a 30-foot container comprising the respective kitchen and living space. Next slide, please. We now have the ground floor plan. This shows the staff accommodation at the top and the cafe, kitchen and butchery on the left-hand side, together with toilet facilities. It also shows the aforementioned central courtyard between the new build and the existing hotel. Next slide, please. Next, we see the first floor plan. This shows the upper level of the staff accommodation, together with a communal staff lounge and terrace on the western wing of the proposal. Next slide, please. We now see the drainage plan, showing the connections for surface water and foul connections to the SUDS and private treatment plant, respectively. Next slide, please. And lastly, we now see the architect's illustration of the external appearance of the development, showing how, while having a contrasting style, the new development would utilise the colour palette of the existing hotel, whilst also being subservient in height. I'll now take members through some photographs to better show the context of the site. Next slide, please. This first photograph shows the view over the existing access from the B846 to where the new building would stand. The station is located off to the left-hand side of the photo. Next slide, please. These next stitch photographs show a clearer reflection of the external appearance of the Moor of Rannoch Hotel and its landscaped backdrop. Next slide, please. And these final images show the view northwards from halfway, show the view eastwards from the existing car park within the station. On the left-hand side, and on the right is the existing retaining wall at the rear edge of the existing car parking area. Next image, please. Thank you, convener. That now concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. And again, we have deputations on this item, so I'll now hand back to the Vice Convener. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. Can I invite Mr. Meikle, applicant, to the rostrum? And we have, excuse me, we have Mr. Young, agent, on the phone. Mr. Young, you might have to *6 to unmute your phone. Good afternoon, Mr. Young. Can you hear us? You might have to *6 to unmute your phone.
Hello there.
Good afternoon. Gentlemen, you have 10 minutes for your deputation. Whenever you're wanting to start, I'll start the clock.
Thank you. I think we've agreed that I will speak first. My name is Jed Young. I'm the director at Chartered Architects firm AIM Design, and I'm speaking in support of this application at the Moor of Rannoch Hotel. I would like to begin by acknowledging the case officer's report and recommendation for approval, which we fully support. The report clearly sets out that the proposal complies with the development plan and that the key material considerations have been carefully assessed. This proposal is in many ways shaped by its location. The remoteness of Rannoch is not simply a constraint, it is a defining characteristic that has informed both the need for the development and its design response. As outlined in both the case officer's report and our own design and access statement, the provision of on-site staff accommodation is critical to sustaining the operation of the hotel. Without it, recruitment and retention in such a remote area is extremely challenging, and the operator will explain this further when he speaks. This development therefore directly supports local employment, economic resilience, and the long-term viability of an important rural tourism asset. Turning to the design, there is a deliberate and site-specific approach which reflects this context. The building utilises repurposed shipping containers as its primary structure as a modular construction. This is not simply an aesthetic decision, but a practical and sustainable response to the challenges of constructing in such a remote location. Off-site fabrication allows for a high level of quality control, reduces construction time on site, minimising impact, and it minimises disruption to the surrounding landscape. This modular approach also provides flexibility and adaptability, key advantages in a rural setting where future needs may evolve. In visual terms, the architecture draws on a familiar local language. Industrial character of the containers is not dissimilar to the corrugated light industrial outbuildings that previously occupied the site. This creates continuity of character rather than an introduction of something that's not familiar. Importantly, the containers are not expressed in a raw form. They are wrapped, or they have a veil around them, in a carefully designed, locally sourced sustainable timber. And this timber facade introduces depth, texture and softness to the building, allowing it to sit comfortably within the landscape. The pattern timber screen also performs multiple functions. It conceals building services, provides shelter to the courtyard spaces, and creates a unified architectural expression. This layering of function and design is a key strength of the proposal. From an environmental perspective, the reuse of shipping containers represents a form of material recycling and reduces embodied carbon. Combined with off-site construction and reduced travel requirements for staff living on-site, the development delivers tangible sustainability benefits. The case officer's report recognises the scale, siting and materiality of the proposal are appropriate, and that landscape and visual impacts are acceptable. In policy terms, the development aligns strongly with objectives supporting rural employment, sustainability, and well-designed development responds to its context. In summary, this is a proposal that is driven by the realities of a remote rural location, essential for supporting employment and staff retention, thoughtfully designed using modular off-site construction, rooted in local character through its material palette and form, environmentally responsible in both construction and operation, and fully supported by planning policy and the case officer's recommendation. For these reasons, I respectfully ask the committee to support the case officer's recommendation and approve the application before you. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, committee. Myself and my wife Steph purchased the Moor of Rannoch back in 2013. My background was in major hotel chains and have always worked in that profession. My wife is a graduate architect, but also happens to be a very high quality chef. We purchased the Moor of Rannoch and have since developed a quality hospitality experience in a very remote part of Scotland. We've gained national recognition, including winning Thistle Awards from Visit Scotland, and our high-end restaurant champions Scottish produce and takes context from the remote environment that we're in, surrounded by Rannoch Moor in the wilderness. We now attract almost 2,500 guests per year to this very remote area, and as mentioned by the planning officer's report, we now open early February until almost the end of November each year, far out with the traditional Highland hospitality opening. We've created well-paid jobs, we have full-time permanent contracted positions available, and we're a living wage accredited employer. In 2019, we employed 9 staff with us. We currently have 3 full-time positions and 2 part-time positions. This is partly due to the effects of COVID, energy and food prices, and the lack of staff accommodation. Our plans have been developed in part using the Scotland Outlook 2030 policy developed by Visit Scotland and the Scottish Tourism Alliance, which is aimed at developing thriving places and to manage responsible tourism. We've also strongly fallen on the Perth and Kinross Strategy and Action Plan 2025 to 2030, which is to strengthen tourism in Perth and Kinross, to promote year-round visits, increase the number of stays, and provide quality visitor experiences. Pillar 2 of that policy is investment in infrastructure, which aims to attract investment to enhance the visitor experience and manage the impact on communities. We also want to develop new tourism product and visitor experiences. And Pillar 4 is about supporting businesses to grow, increasing the levels of well-paid jobs and build on resilience in challenging environments. It also aims to support businesses with solutions to specific issues, such as limited transport affecting recruitment and lack of staff accommodation. Therefore, we have been working on our plans since 2019. However, the effects of COVID and the previous mentioned issues with hospitality have pushed us back to this point. We want to build on the previous footprint of 3 buildings which existed in what is our current car park. These buildings date from the 1950s. One of them was a petrol station and garage, one of them was a deer larder and butchery, and one of them was a laundry room and associated bottle store for the hotel. These buildings were subject to planning approval in 2009 for a new building on that site. The buildings were then subsequently demolished between 2009 and 2011. We wish to build on almost exactly the same footprint. The building we're proposing has 3 specific objectives. One is to provide high quality staff accommodation. The lack of accommodation is well known in Perthshire, especially Highland Perthshire. The second one is a deer larder and butchery. We want to bring back a circular economy of providing local produce for local businesses. So we want to process venison carcasses straight off local estates and sell that to local businesses. The third part is tourism facilities. We want to provide facilities to the number of people who visit Rannoch Station as a destination in its own right. Rannoch Station can get particularly busy for day trippers who use it as a starting point for activities. Train travel, walks, dog walking, cycling, all activities that we're aiming to promote for a sustainable, healthy population. Unfortunately, if you wish to start that at Rannoch Station, you do need to arrive by car. Most of our business guests in the hotel actually arrive by train. Around 70% of our guests make the travel to Rannoch by train. Our proposal is to provide facilities for those that are coming here as a day tripper or day visits to the area. We want to build on the Rannoch Station tea room and the notion that Rannoch Station itself is a destination. But the accessibility issues for an island platform over a very steep aging footbridge means that not everyone is able to access those facilities. Those facilities are also not open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we wish to provide additional facilities in terms of tourism infrastructure, accessible toilets, baby changing facilities, fresh drinking water, Wi-Fi, bike maintenance points, charging points for mobile phones and electric bikes, and various other facilities which we experience on a daily basis living there. When we own a large white building in the middle of a public car park, inevitably our doorbell goes 9-10 times a day with people requesting facilities. It sounds selfish. We wish to stop people having to ring our doorbell 10 times a day and provide those facilities free of charge in the car park. Thank you for hearing our position. I hope you approve. Myself and Jed would be open to take any questions.
On that, members, could you populate the chat function? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Convener. Thank you for your presentation and your colleagues. I'm very aware of its location and it's a really nice location. Could you just go into a bit more detail? You said facilities for people to stop ringing their doorbell. So I assume you mean toilets. Can you just go into what else you're actually referring to? Thanks.
Certainly. So our building sits beside the public station car park. There are days of the week where the station car park, which has around 25 spaces, is full and the cars and vehicles park nose to tail down the B846 on approach to Rannoch Station. There can be hundreds of visitors per day coming up to Rannoch Station, some for longer periods, extended walks, some literally come up, turn the car, take some photos and drive back down the road again. A trip to Rannoch Station is seen as a day out and a destination on its own. What we're looking to provide, as I say, the station itself has not been developed, the facilities, since around 1996, when the station car park was formed and tarmacked. Since then, the number of visitors per day has increased substantially. What we are looking to provide is modern tourism facilities that people expect when they go to these areas. One of our shipping containers, a 40-foot shipping container, contains 2 disabled access toilets. As mentioned, the island platform is by a very steep footbridge. It does not meet any modern accessibility standards. We have a picnic table sitting in the car park at the moment, which the tea room will service guests sitting in the station, but unfortunately they do not have access to toilet facilities. Our building dates from 1890 and is also not disabled accessible, and it would be major structural issues to adapt our building at this time. Therefore, we want to provide 2 fully accessible toilet facilities. We want to provide baby changing. We want to provide fresh drinking water. Our property benefits from a borehole with a very high quality supply. We regularly are filling water bottles for cyclists and walkers, Duke of Edinburgh and the likes. We would like to provide a dog wash station. We live in the middle of a peat bog. We are dog owners ourselves. 9 times out of 10, you walk down to Loch Leyden to the beach. The dog has a lovely paddle and on its way back jumps into the worst bit of the peat bog. We constantly have to pull out our hose pipe, provide towels and allow people to wash their dogs before they put them back in the car. A modern stainless steel dog washing facility would go in there. We would like to provide waste disposal points for camper vans. Rannoch Station in Loch Rannoch has a serious issue with camper vanners and the numbers increasing. We want to provide facilities to allow responsible owners to dispose of waste correctly and free of charge. We want to provide mountain bike and bike facilities in terms of a stand with tools, bike pumps, and a number of spare parts available for people on long cycles. As seen this weekend in the ETAP Caledonia, Rannoch is a very popular cycle destination. Free Wi-Fi, mobile phone charging, and small appliance charging as well.
Councillor Illingworth.
Can you tell me if the accommodation that you're proposing will be used 12 months of the year?
Although our business operates 10 months a year, we employ our full-time staff on permanent full-time 12-month contracts. Last year, our staff received 58 days worth of paid holidays. So yes, we would envisage that our staff accommodation is available all year. Whether staff choose to use it 12 months a year or whether they wish to travel, that's them.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Vice Convener. Thank you for your deputation. Two questions really. I'll do one if anybody comes in behind me. Back to the car parking. You said it's a very popular area for parking, station car park full. I can't remember how many spaces you're providing this new car park. I seen it in my mind it was 10 with 2 disabled spaces. I mean, do you think that's enough? Is there space to develop even more car parking spaces?
The car parking issues at the moment are not anything of our making. The car park does not belong to us. It is a Network Rail property car park. They have marked the bays and laid it out, as I say, in 96 was when the car park was tarmacked. Additional parking is available on the B846, which most of it takes place in front of our building. So the people most affected by it are our guests looking out the windows to see cars. However, there's a high turnover of cars during the day, so they're not all there at one time. It also tends to be concentrated around the times when the tea room is open. Our existing car park has 6 spaces. We are proposing a car park with 10 spaces, including 2 disabled bays. There is an argument we could tarmac more of Rannoch Moor and provide more parking. For the short period of time that may be required each day, but we think there is sufficient parking Our proposals are not necessarily to attract more people to Rannoch Station. It is merely to provide facilities for the guests who are already coming to the area.
Just as a footnote to that question, if I may, and you're talking about all these facilities you provide, which sounds marvellous. Are you proposing to install EV chargers?
At the moment, there is a lack of power infrastructure available in Rannoch Station. However, part of our proposal will be to upgrade the existing transformer to a 3-phase supply. Therefore, electric car charging would be possible. We have had positive talks with Network Rail and ScotRail. It may be more beneficial to provide electric car charging in the public car park rather than our car park, and Network Rail are open to discussions of us running cables and providing infrastructure within the public car park on their behalf.
And my other question really comes down to the business itself. Obviously, some of the comments related to the effect it might have on the tea room, which is not a planning consideration. But from your side of it, how do you aim this cafe to work? Is it like a takeaway? People pull up, get the food, coffee, sandwich, and go, or is it? Are you trying to encourage a sit-down type of operation, or what? How do you see it going?
Our proposal is based around a deer larder and venison. The project is called the Deer Bothy. We wish to take whole carcasses, process them locally and sell them to local businesses. As part of recovering the costs from the proposal in the building, yes, we would like to put in a food outlet. It is billed as a street food outlet. We want to showcase venison as a healthy choice using local produce. We envisage serving 5 or 6 venison dishes, nothing else. So we want people to come and taste the venison. If they then want to buy some venison sausages, burgers, a venison rump to take home and have their Sunday lunch, they will be able to do that. We are not looking to compete against the tea room. We are not going to be serving cakes and sandwiches and things like that. It is not a fast food offering. It will be place your order, there, as say 5 or 6 dishes, you will get a vibrating call point, you will go and sit in the courtyard, and 15, 20, 25 minutes later, when your buzzer vibrates, you will collect the dishes. Like our restaurant is a high quality dining destination, we want to promote venison in the best possible use and show some different scenarios of how you can use venison, not just burgers and sausages.
Gentlemen, there's no further questions. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations on this application, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? No questions for officers. Okay. Ask for a motion, Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to move the paper as it stands. I know the Rannoch, more of Rannoch Hotel well. I've spent a lot of my youth there, and I think a facility of this sort would be excellent. So I'm moving that we approve the application.
Thank you. And Bailey McLaren, you wish to second?
Yes, Convener, content to second. You know, it's a really strong application actually, and in a rural area, adding to rural economy, etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any amendment? No amendment. Do members have any comment on the report? Comment on the report, therefore planning permission is therefore granted. Thank you. Sorry. We'll move on to the final application of the day. This is for the erection of a free-range egg production building and associated works at Gloagburn Farm, Tippermore. And to introduce the report is Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Convener. I'll try and be as swift as I can. The last application today relates to the replacement of existing buildings for egg production at Gloagburn Farm near Tippermore with a new state-of-the-art free-range egg facility with a capacity for 32,000 laying hens in a building covering approximately 3,200 square metres. The application is before members today in light of the receipt of 6 letters of objection, which are summarised in paragraph 50. However, fundamental concerns were raised in respect of noise, odour and air quality impacts, adverse visual impacts, over-intensive development and lack of environmental impact and community consultation. In addition, the Methven and District Community Council, while not specifically objecting, raised concern over air pollution. In summary, in terms of the merits of the proposal, the application has been supported by information which confirmed the site-specific requirements for this proposal and the strengthening of the existing business and linkages with the farm shop. There's been no objection from consultees, and many of the areas of concerns to nearby residents can be adequately controlled by planning condition. Therefore, the recommendation is to approve subject to the conditions listed within the report. I'll now take you through a short presentation. Next slide, please. Here we can see the location of the site, a short distance to the west of Tippermore. The access to the site is taken off the C410 with an access point for the farm, with the farm shop having its own dedicated access 135 metres or thereabouts further to the east. The site is characterised by the location to the north of the existing grouping of farm buildings with low-lying fields in almost all other directions. Next slide, please. This plan shows the site layout in greater detail. The elongated egg production unit shall run across the north of the site, a short distance beyond where the smaller existing buildings sit. An extended hardcore track would lead to the parking and turning area, while the building itself would sit on a concrete apron. Next slide, please. We now have the floor plan and elevations. As members shall see, while the building has an extensive footprint, the height to eaves is only 3.3 metres with a 6 metre ridge height. As such, given the proximity to neighbouring properties at around 330 metres at its closest, the proposal is not considered to have any undue impact from a visual or scale perspective, given the context of other agricultural buildings. Next slide, please. We now have a landscaping plan for the proposals, which shows how additional planting would help integrate the proposal into the local landscape and also provide opportunities for biodiversity enhancement. I will now take members through some photographs from my recent site visit to better show the context of the site. This first photograph shows the view from the C410 at a point to the southwest of the existing Gloagburn farm. The roof of the existing egg production building can be seen towards the centre of the picture, with the scale of larger agricultural buildings to the right-hand side towards the road edge. Next slide, please. The next photograph is from the U47 to the east of the application site. This is the road which connects Tippermore northwards to the A85 trunk road in Methven. Again, this shows the larger scale of some of the other surrounding buildings at the site. Next slide, please. These next images show the view northwards from halfway down the existing farm access track on the left and a further view southwards from close to the existing egg-laying buildings, looking back towards the farm grouping. Next slide, please. These penultimate stitched images show the view northwards past the existing egg buildings. The building on the right has already been partly demolished. The view in the distance are towards Methven and Methven Castle on the higher ground. Next slide, please. And these last images show the view northwards at the existing site access at the top, while the bottom two images show the westbound and eastbound visibility of the C410 respectively. Next slide, please. Thank you, Convener. That now concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. And we do have a deputation on this item, so I'll hand back to the Vice Convener for the deputation procedures.
Yep. Thank you, Convener. I'd like to call on Mr. Niven, applicant. Good afternoon. You've got 5 minutes for your deputation, Mr. Niven, so whenever you're ready, I'll start the clock.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Crawford Niven and I farm at Globurn Farm, Tibbermore. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I am a fourth generation farmer. My great grandfather moved to Globurn in 1923, 103 years ago. Globurn is more than just our business. It is our family's home and livelihood. Over the years, we have built Niven Farming into a 1,400 acre mixed operation, and alongside it, Globurn Farm Shop and Cafe, which sells our own produce, including free-range eggs, directly to the community. That connection between what we grow and what people buy locally is something that gives us great pride. But what I want to be honest about today is where we are as a farm. Arable farming is becoming harder to justify year on year. Input costs keep rising. Cereal prices have remained stubbornly low, and the long-term picture is one of continued pressure. To enable the next generation of the farming family to continue to farm the area, the business needs to continue to evolve. Expanding our free-range egg enterprise is not an opportunistic decision, it is a considered and necessary one, made to ensure that Niven Farming remains a viable, living farm business for the next 103 years. What we are proposing replaces two existing aging units that are already on the farm, consolidating them into a single modern facility that meets current welfare and environmental standards. This is not a leap into the unknown. It builds on what we already do, on land we already farm, and an operation we already run. We have worked hard to put together a thorough and robust application. This submission includes odour, noise, flood risk, drainage, landscape, and transport assessments. A comprehensive package to give the committee every confidence that the proposal is acceptable. And that confidence is well founded. Not a single statutory consultee has raised an objection. Everybody asked to scrutinise this application has been satisfied with what they have seen. The planning officer, having carefully considered the full application, recommends approval. This proposal represents a £2.2 million investment in the farm and will create new jobs in the local rural economy. It's fully consistent with MPF4 and the Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan. It has been assessed thoroughly and found to be sound. We are asking the committee to support what the officer recommends and to support the future of a farming family that has deep roots in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Niven. Are you willing to take questions from members?
Yeah.
Members, if you could populate the chat function. Mr. Niven, there appears to be no questions. You're free to go. Oh, sorry, Mr. Niven, my apologies. The convener has popped a wee question in here.
It was quite unfair of us to have you sitting there the whole time and not actually ask you a question. So my question is quite straightforward. How many extra jobs will this provide, or is it just the same jobs in number?
We currently employ one full-time and two part-time on the hens, and as this project goes ahead, that will increase to the equivalent of 4 full-time jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Niven. You're free to go. Convener, there's no further deputations, so I'll hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Vice Convener. Can I ask members if they have any questions for officers? Councillor Allen, I assume that was the question, or? Any questions at all for officers? Councillor Braun.
Can't get this thing to work at the moment. It's a very quick question to probably to Lynn, and I noticed when I was reading the objections, several people had recalculated the noise figures. I just wondered if she had seen that and had any comment to make on those.
No, I haven't seen the objections recalculations of the figures, but we're satisfied that noise can be controlled through the conditions set for the nighttime and daytime period.
Thank you. Any further questions? No further questions? Therefore, can I ask for a motion? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. Yes, I am going to send a motion to accept the proposal on the recommendation of the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. You wish to second?
Thank you, convener. There is an unfair perception around poultry farming that dates from many, many years ago. I think that is an unfair, and modern poultry farming is virtually odour-free and noise-free, and has great welfare concerns for the poultry. We have a similar development near us in Abernethy, and we have no issues with it at all. So happy to second, convener.
Thank you. Can I ask if there's any amendment? Amendment. The committee have any comment on the report? Councillor James.
Yeah, just very briefly, convener, because I know Crawford stood there and addressed the committee. Like you said, it's sad that we don't have any questions. I mean, the fact of the matter is the report was really good. And as David Illingworth has just said, I think it's worth members actually visiting a chicken facility or an egg laying facility. The owners are quite willing to show you around, and it's completely different to how it used to be. And I think this is a fantastic addition to what's already a successful farm out at Globeburg. It's good to see it come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I've just got a quick comment to make. I think overall this is a strong proposal. It's going to support the rural economy. It's taking into consideration the environmental and the community aspects. I believe that the jobs that he's just said has increased. It's not a great deal of jobs, but it's jobs that are desperately needed within our rural community. So I'm happy to support this. Okay, as there was no amendment, planning permission is therefore granted. Thank you. And there's no pans today, so that's the end of the meeting. So thank you to everybody for attending. Thank you.